clear. If you have decisive influence, you may need to consider this. I don't. I didn't. If I had decisive influence, I wouldn't have been trying to sell the club starting in June of 2024.
Textor is, after all, a minority shareholder at Palace, but also a majority shareholder at Lyon. So in his mind, the Eagles should be allowed in the competition. Simon Jordan, unsurprisingly, pulled no punches.
This is stupid from UEFA. This is a stupid set of governance, a stupid set of rules. If you don't want multi-club ownership, then don't allow it in the first place. If you've got documentation that details that the construct of a shareholders agreement or the principles of which they operate shows no decisive influence, then ignore the shareholding and look at the reality of what you're staring at. Palace should be in the Europa League. His financial contribution enabled Palace to sail through choppy waters.
Textor is in the process of selling his stake, but he did reveal that he initially wanted to buy a majority stake in Palace. So what does he think of current chairman Steve Parish then?
His ambition every year is to avoid relegation. Our ambition is to climb the table. Who thought we could go from bankruptcy to winning South America in 2.5 years down there? I mean, that was crazy.
We're expected to find out by the end of the week whether Palace will be allowed to compete in the Europa League. And Owen Farrell has been named on the bench alongside Marcus Smith for the Lions' final warm-up game against a combined Australia-New Zealand 15 this weekend. It's his 4th tour.
You know, he's, I suppose, lucky enough to play when he was very young, and you know, you need the stars to align. I would have thought, as far as that concerned, when your first one starts, I suppose it allows you to have a look at that type of thing.
Remember, you can listen to that one live and exclusively on talkSPORT on Saturday morning.
Good evening, how are we? This is the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT, and for the next 3 hours, delighted to say I'm alongside Rory Jennings to discuss all the latest breaking transfer news. I can't lie, as a Forest fan, I'm absolutely devastated to hear that Morgan Gibbs-White looks destined for Spurs. He's off for a medical tomorrow. I certainly can't remember the last time a transfer moved so quickly, so we will keep you up to date on that. Elsewhere, we'll be reacting to the absolutely blockbuster John Textor interview with Jim White and Simon Jordan earlier, who revealed the exact moment he realised Palace may be in some deep, deep water with UEFA and Europa League eligibility. Palace fans, get in touch. How do you feel about that? How did John Textor come across? And what a belter of a guest. We'll be speaking to former Liverpool CEO Peter Moore, who helped guide Liverpool to its most successful period in the Premier League era. We'll be getting his take on Liverpool going forward into next season and his new investment in Polish football. Let's get into it then. This is the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT. Rory, how are we, mate? How are we?
I mean, I'm well. Of course, I'm well. The jewel in the crown of my football team hasn't just been targeted by Tottenham in a £60 million transfer that looks likely to happen. That's the crucial thing here. This is excellent work from Tottenham. It's exactly the way that transfers should be done, under the radar, announced just as you feel like they're happening. And I think this is an amazing signing for Tottenham. Tottenham fans must be dancing on the ceiling. This is sensational stuff from them. For Nottingham Forest and for you, I mean, this feels bad because a player like, you know, when Elanga left and you kind of think, okay, that's not good, but a player like Elanga feels replaceable. This doesn't feel the same. Morgan Gibbs-White felt like the personality of that team, the public face of that club. He just got the England call up, and it feels like he is irreplaceable. How are you feeling about this one?
Well, I need to have a minute to think about my emotions, to articulate them in the right way, because we have got some team news. We'll get back to the Morgan Gibbs-White in a second. Right, host Switzerland take on Finland in a must-win game for both sides if they were to qualify for the latter stages of the Women's Euros. The Moose has your team news.
Yeah, as you rightly say, this is massive for both Finland against Switzerland. The winner progresses to the quarterfinals. A draw would see Switzerland progress, though, on goal difference in Geneva. So it is, at least they've got 2 results on their team, on their side. The teams are pretty straightforward. Both are unchanged from the last games. So for Switzerland, Maritz of Aston Villa and the Evalti of Arsenal both start once again. As for Finland, the West Ham pair of Siren and Nystrom are both in the starting lineup, as is Simonan of Spurs and Olling of Crystal Palace. They start in Geneva at 8 o'clock. Winner takes all to get through to the quarterfinals.
Brilliant stuff, Moose. Thank you. Another game in the Women's Euros as Group A leaders Norway take on Iceland, who cannot qualify for the latter stages. talkSPORT's Angelina Kelly has your team news.
It's Norway versus Iceland in Group A. 2-time European champions Norway may have already won this group, but after 2 slightly lacklustre performances so far will want a victory tonight, as they hope to secure 3 wins from 3 in the group stage for the first time since 2013. Meanwhile, Iceland may already be eliminated from the competition and are yet to score, but are playing for pride tonight as their players insist they want to exit Euro 2025 on a positive note with a first finals win in 12 years. For Norway, they make 6 changes as their star forwards, former Ballon d'Or winner Ada Hegerberg, Barcelona's Caroline Graham-Hansen and Chelsea's Guro Reiten are rested ahead of their quarter-final next Wednesday, as Manchester United trio Elizabeth Turland, Celine Bizet and Lisa Nalsung start for the first time in this tournament. Arsenal's Frida Maanum remains in the 11 but drops back into midfield. For Iceland, they make 4 changes across the pitch, switching out both fullbacks but stick with their captain Glausig Vikas to hold down the defence. Up front, Sandra Jensen keeps her place alongside ex-Arsenal defender Rob Holding's partner, winger Saivin Jodadish, who I'm not surprised about because she has throw-ins that would rival Rory Delap. Kick-off at 8 p.m. in Group A in turn. It's Norway against Iceland.
Great stuff. Thanks, Angelina. Right now to the big breaking news. It pains me, it breaks my heart to have to read this live on air, but talkSPORT understands Tottenham are confident of completing a move for Nottingham Forest midfielder Morgan Gibbs-White. The England international set for a medical tomorrow ahead of the move. Gibbs-White's believed to have a £60 million release clause in his Forest contract, which Spurs have informed the club they will trigger.
How you feeling?
Mate, Spurs are ripping the beating heart out of this Nottingham Forest side. With Anthony Elanga, I understand. Because Anthony Elanga, I understand why they let him go. Great profit. But he's not one of the top 5 players at Nottingham Forest. Morgan Gibbs-White is the main man. Then you've got Milenkovic, Murillo, arguably the best centre-back pairing in the Premier League. Ola Aina, one of the best full-backs. I mean, Chris Wood had the season of his career last season. So I understand them trying to make a profit on Morgan Gibbs-White. But he is the beating heart of this side. So why rip it out when you've just secured European football for the first time in 30 years, when there are no issues with PSR? That has gone. Why on earth would you allow that to happen? It's confusing. The owner speaks of creating new history, but I cannot see how you do that without Morgan Gibbs-White at the centre of it.
Is it not quite simply that Morgan Gibbs-White must want out? Morgan Gibbs-White isn't quite as loyal to Nottingham Forest as you hope he would be, or as you thought he would be. There is, Morgan Gibbs-White, this isn't his first rodeo. There are other sets of supporters that have questioned the loyalty of Morgan Gibbs-White in the past, and he's now done to them, or he's done to you what he did to them.
Rory, we knew this day was coming. We knew that eventually Morgan Gibbs-White would go on to another club. We knew it was going to happen. But when we've just lost Anthony Elanga, and when you're looking for a leader and a captain, which he was many times last season, to step up, this is why it's so devastating. I didn't think Morgan Gibbs-White for 1 minute was going to be a career Nottingham Forest player since his move from Wolves. But for it to happen now, I'm concerned about the ripple effect this is going to have on the squad, because Anthony Elanga's gone, and I thought, that's it, great profit, let's reinvest, go again into the Conference League, which we should be winning, or we should be at least getting to the last stages of that tournament. Now all of a sudden I'm questioning, can we even go far in that tournament? And what about Murillo, one of the most exciting centre-backs in Europe? What about Milenkovic, who for 12 million quid showed himself as one of the best centre-backs in the league?
It's interesting you mentioned them. Let me put this to you then. If you think about the way that Nuno Espirito Santo likes to set up, if you think about what made Nottingham Forest so good for so long last season, it was their resoluteness at the back. It was the fact that they were so robust and they had, at various points, the best goalkeeper and the best two centre-halves in the league in terms of the way that they were performing. Certainly comparable to the very best, if not the best. That is actually the beating heart. You know, when you've referred to Morgan Gibbs-White as the beating heart, the foundation of everything that Nuno Espirito Santo was building last year wasn't actually Gibbs-White. It wasn't actually anything in a forward-thinking capacity.
That's not true at all. For me, that is the sort of view that misunderstands that's only half the story, because you're right. Part of Nuno's shtick is that you sit low and you defend and soak up the pressure, but that's only successful if you've got an absolute magician on the ball that can go on the counter-attack and make things work very quickly in short spaces of time. And Morgan Gibbs-White is the epicentre of that. And so to lose him is nothing short of a tragedy for Nottingham Forest. It's nothing short of a situation which I don't think anybody that you can get in realistically can replace what Morgan Gibbs-White is for Nottingham Forest. And that's why Forest fans that I see online are absolutely fuming that they've been blindsided by this. What's so frustrating is that when you buy a player from Wolves for 42 million quid, and then all of a sudden we're at a time where he's got a £60 million release clause. Wolves have 10% sell-on fee for that. So we're making a pittance for one of the best up-and-coming players in this country. It is shocking.
If I said to you then, before this deal was announced, if I said that you were going to lose one player this year, and I said to you that you will have to choose, Gibbs-White will go or Milenkovic will go, what do you think would have been more damaging to the team?
Gibbs-White.
Really?
Really.
What do you think Nuno Espirito Santo would have said?
Morgan Gibbs-White. Mate, he is one of in that position last season, was one of the best players in the Premier League. So look, Spurs fans, I am not surprised that Morgan Gibbs-White wants to join Spurs. I'm not. It's a huge club that are in Champions League next season, has a fantastic infrastructure and looks like a really exciting project moving forward. So I'm not saying I can't understand why. All I'm trying to articulate is how absolutely devastating it is for Nottingham Forest.
Do you think you're finding it more devastating because it's Tottenham? Like, you know, if he'd gone to Manchester City, at various points, it looked like that's where he was going. Pep Guardiola had spoken quite openly about how much he admired the player. We could see a world in which Morgan Gibbs-White would be part of that rejuvenated Manchester City midfield. If that had happened, do you think you would find it more understandable than the fact that he's gone to Tottenham, who finished 17th last year?
I wouldn't be as blindsided if it was Manchester United, who don't have Champions League football next season. The fact that it's Spurs, whilst I understand it's a big club, whilst I understand there's excitement moving forward, I'd almost prefer it if it was United or a club that finished in the top 5
you could just rationalise it.
I could rationalise it more, because ultimately Spurs were in many other seasons gone by, there'd be a championship team next season. And so it hurts even more.
Do you know what? Obviously, when we've been talking about this transfer, naturally, because you're in the room, we've been focusing on it from a Nottingham Forest perspective. We've been talking about how much it hurts you, what it means to the Nottingham Forest side, how you're going to be depleted by his omission next season, and how you progress. We're looking at it all through the lens of Forest. I'll tell you what, I don't like doing this, but if we adopt a Tottenham Hotspur perspective for a moment, Tottenham Hotspur fans have to be over the moon.
Absolutely.
This is sensational.
He's a wonderful player. And can I say one thing? We've spoken a lot when we've been together about Thomas Tuchel. Thomas Tuchel picking the likes of Jordan Henderson over Morgan Gibbs-White in that initial England squad.
Absolutely.
What Thomas Tuchel did there, whether he meant to or not, is he sent a message to Morgan Gibbs-White, he sent a message to Callum Hudson-Odoi, any players in that Nottingham Forest squad that might be near a call-up, and he said, ultimately, you need to play for a so-called bigger club if you want to play for England. And that's what happens when at the top of the England team, you have a manager that ultimately doesn't believe in meritocracy. Because I could not understand. He must be on a parallel universe, Thomas Tuchel, to pick Jordan Henderson over Morgan Gibbs-White in that initial squad. Since then, Morgan Gibbs-White's been involved, obviously, because he's impressed him in camp. But it's just absolutely devastating. Nottingham Forest fans, we want to hear from you. 03717 22 33 44. Call and you will get through. Let us know on text 81089. What do you think? Spurs fans, an absolute steal for you. £60 million is the reported fee. We believe he's on his way to Hotspur Way for a medical tomorrow. This is fast moving. We will, of course, go to our chief football correspondent, Alex Crook, for the very latest a little bit later on. You're listening to the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT with Lad Brooks, 18+, begambleaware.org. You're listening to the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT with me, Max Scott, an incredibly heartbroken Nottingham Forest fan, and of course, broadcaster Rory Jennings. We're going to get to your calls. Jack, the Forest fan, is waiting on the line. We'll get to your calls in a moment, but first, it's time now to get a quick odds update with Ladbrokes.
Odds update on talkSPORT with Ladbrokes. Supercharge your odds with our Odds Boost button. Selected markets applies to first £50 of stake. Terms apply. 18+. Gambleaware.org.
Delighted to welcome in now a man who looks like he's absolutely buzzing that Oasis are back. Cal Gilder, how are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm absolutely buzzing that Oasis are back. How are you doing?
I'm doing incredibly well, mate. Well, actually, what am I talking about? I'm devastated because Morgan Gibbs-White's on his way to Spurs, but all the more better for seeing you, mate. Let's talk about the Club World Cup final. Of course, it's going to be live on talkSPORT. I can't see a world, sorry to say, Rory, where Chelsea have a chance against the Parisians because they look on a different stratosphere at the minute.
Yeah, European champions are the red hot favourites for the Club World Cup. They're 3-10, while Chelsea are 9-4 to lift the trophy. But if we're talking 90 minutes betting, it's PSG still odds on at 3-5, and Chelsea are actually about 4-1. Rory won't need reminding of this because he's probably sick of me saying it, but before the ball was kicked, Chelsea each way has been my shout all tournament, and I doubled down on that at 16-1 post Flamengo. My Chuffy badge is no doubt in the post, but the run might have been favourable. They've looked increasingly assured each game, Chelsea, but you know, it's just so hard to see past PSG, innit? Like, Real Madrid had quietly grown into the tournament as well, and they destroyed them last night. Don't think we'll see another 4-0 PSG win. That's as short as 18-1. But they're so difficult to back against. But if you think Munich 2012, Porto 2021, Chelsea have a habit of getting a result in a final, don't they? And it's 12-1 that they win on penalties on Sunday. And if you think it finishes 1-0 with Cole Palmer scoring the goal, you'll get 35-1 with Ladbrokes.
Oh, very nice, Cal. And yeah, fingers crossed, absolutely. In terms of feeling optimistic, and you've made me feel very optimistic about Chelsea's chances in the Club World Cup, England beat the Netherlands 4-0 in the Women's Euros. What's the outrights looking on that competition?
Yeah, England are back in it after last night, but ultimately we can't see past Spain. The way they've dominated in their opening two games has seen them cut to odds on to win the tournament at 5-6. It's incredible, really, when, you know, that was basically the odds at the halfway point of the group stage. France are second favourites at 5-1, but that's actually a drift from their pre-tournament odds, which just goes to show the strength of Spain. England marginally behind at 11-2. Obviously a lot longer than their 4-1 odds pre-tournament, but it's a heck of a lot more rosy than the 8-1 that they were before they played the Netherlands. And obviously that result is going to play into it, isn't it? Because, you know, the only team that is shortened besides Spain are Sweden, and then 12-1 from 14s, which surprises me because even if they get a result against Germany to top their group, they're going to play over France, the Netherlands or England in the quarterfinals, and those sides are among the top six to win the tournament.
Yeah, I'm backing Serena Wiegmann to show her sort of championship prowess. I think they're going to go all the way. Back-to-back Euros wins for the Lionesses in the England under-21s. But tonight, of course, we've got Euros Group A in action. What have you got for us in that regard?
Well, amazingly, to me at least, who has to look at odds every day, not a single one of tonight's teams is odds on. In the dead rubber, Norway are 5-4 favourites against Iceland, who are 2-1. The draws a touch over 2-1 as well. Norway are already through as group winners and they're resting some of the key players, while, you know, Iceland will want to go home with their heads held high. So I fancy them to get a result there. Big one, obviously, between host Switzerland and Finland. Hosts are the favourites at evens, and Finland are about 3-1-ish. The draw's 2-1. While that's tight, qualification market is heavily in Switzerland's favour. They're 4-1 on there, and Finland are 11-4, and I'm sure that's just because a draw sees the host through. So with a best bet tonight, do a Group A double. Draw and over 2.5 goals in Norway-Iceland, and draw and under 2.5 goals between Switzerland and Finland pays 34-1.
Brilliant stuff, Cal. Thank you so much. Absolute pleasure, mate. That was a look at the latest odds with Ladbrokes. 18+, BeGambleAware.org.
Odds update on talkSPORT with Ladbrokes. Supercharge your odds with our Odds Boost button. Selected markets applies to first £50 of stake. Terms apply. 18+. Gambleaware.org.
Forest fans, Spurs fans, keep your calls coming in. 03717 222 3344. We're reacting to the fastest moving transfer I can remember. Morgan Gibbs-White, the heartbeat of Nottingham Forest. He's on his way to Spurs. Jack, the Forest fan, what do you think, mate? Are you as heartbroken as me?
I am absolutely gutted at this. This Elanga going for me. My mates were a bit disappointed about it, and I says, look, this big boss has not done us wrong. Since he's bought the club, He's done nothing but good for this club, right? I understand selling Elanga is replaceable. He is.
Yeah, I agree.
But Morgan Gibbs-White was signed for £45 million, and they put a release clause in the contract for £60 million. That has let the club down massively.
Agree.
Who wrote that contract up? I am absolutely disgusted. I fell out with mates over it saying, look, let's just have faith in this big boss. This signing, what's the point in it? Where's it come from?
Jack, one thing I would say is, and I totally agree, I think it's absolutely outrageous that there is that release clause in, because you're hardly going to make any profit considering the sell-on fees that are going towards. But I've got to ask you, Jack, looking ahead to the Conference League next season, before this, even with Anthony Elanga going, I was feeling confident that we could be in Leipzig for the final or win the whole thing. Crikey, if Spurs can win the Europa League, then Forest can win the Conference League. But now, I'm not so sure. Do you think Marinakis is going to put his hands in his pocket? I think he will. Who would you like to see come in?
The thing is, pal, you can't attract the best players with that Conference League. I had my ticket, hotel, booked for that final. I had it booked. I was that confident. Who can you replace now? Who's going to want to come to a club in the Conference League? I'm sorry, world-class players, top-class players are not going to come. You've got that Bakayoko. You've got that Malik Fofana who we're linked with. Fofana's already come out openly and said he's waiting for bigger offers on the table. Who could you replace Morgan Gibbs-White with? He's not the most clinical, but what he does for that team, everything goes through him.
I saw Tyler Dibbling linked. How do you feel about that?
No, thank you. Morgan Gibbs-White, go offer him a bigger contract if that's how it works. Go offer him a bigger contract, double his money, because he is the point in that team that creates everything.
Jack, I couldn't agree more. The one thing is, though, I think it's too late to offer him an even bigger contract, because it looks like he's going out the door. Jack, the Forest fan, absolute pleasure having you on. We're now going to get the Spurs perspective. Alex is a Spurs fan. Alex, you must be over the moon, mate.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a surprise. We didn't see this coming. It's a quiet summer. We've got Wimbledon on, women's football, and the Club World Cup, which nobody's really interested in. What we are interested in is seeing how Tottenham are going to build this side and give Frank the tools he needs to really push on. And we didn't see this coming at all. I mean, there's been talked about Eze and the guy from Brentford, and this signing is like at the price for an Englishman with Premier League experience, and the age he's at is just an absolute bargain, really, I think. Really is a bargain.
What do you think now, then? Like, I think Tottenham have done some sensational business. In fact, it's not often that we say this. I think Daniel Levy has basically got everything right, and I understand totally that he deserves a lot of criticism. I understand totally why Tottenham fans are hostile towards Daniel Levy and his custodian, the way that he's been the custodian of the club. However, since the day that you made history in Bilbao, since the day that you confined the term Spursism to the ash heap of history, he's got everything right. The sacking of Postecoglou, it was brave, it was correct. The appointment of Frank, it was brave, it was correct. And now you look at your transfer business. Kudus coming in, under the radar, just getting it done. Then making this statement signing. This is a marquee signing, an England international coming in. What do you think the ceiling is for you next season? What's the dream under Thomas Frank next year?
I don't know, but the big question is how long has Frank been in the frame, and are these his signings? Because if they are, I think that our potential is extreme. But there are a couple of things we need to sort out. One of them is a goalkeeper. Vicario's great. He was great in the final. He made some great saves, but he's a liability, and the defence gets put under a lot of pressure, and the defence needs a reliable keeper behind them. So I do feel we need a better keeper, and perhaps some kind of a backup for Udogie, who also feel is a bit vulnerable.
Alex, Morgan Gibbs-White, 60 million, absolute snip. Are you worried that anyone might come in and try and hijack this at the last moment?
No, not at all. This is done when old Romano says on Twitter,
here we go.
Here we go. It's done, isn't it? I mean, you all know it's done. It's done, and it's like it's very clever business of Daniel Levy. I mean, doing this so kosher and quiet. You got to take your hat off to him for that, and also like what you said about the sacking and where can we go? I certainly think we're going to do well in the league and do well in the cups, and certainly a lot better than the other teams who have sort of got thrown in the Champions League. I mean, look at Villa. Villa did really well last season, coming so far in the Champions League and doing well in the league. And the cups as well.
You
so if we
talk
can
about
have a season like that, I think we've got to be pleased with ourselves to have a season like that. But we could really do with our keeper.
Absolutely, Alex. You talk about Champions League. I'm sure that has been absolutely key in the negotiations and discussions about getting Morgan Gibbs-White from Nottingham Forest to Spurs next season. Medical expected tomorrow. All the information on talksport.com. We'll be getting the very latest on that fast-moving transfer from Alex Crook when he joins the show, our chief football correspondent. Keep your calls and messages coming in. 03717 223344. That's on WhatsApp, and 81089 on messages. But up next, we'll be joined by the former Liverpool CEO Peter Moore. Stick around. You do not want to miss this one.
With Crystal Palace's place in the Europa League still in limbo, the man at the centre of the storm, John Textor, has given his side of the multi-club ownership story live on talkSPORT. It surrounds a UEFA deadline to sell being missed back in March, but he's clear that he believes a breach has not taken place.
The rule's very clear. If you have decisive influence, you may need to consider this. I don't. I didn't. If I had decisive influence, I wouldn't have been trying to sell the club starting in June of 2024.
Textor is, after all, a minority shareholder at Palace, but also a majority shareholder at Lyon. So in his mind, the Eagles should be allowed in the competition. Simon Jordan, unsurprisingly, pulled no punches.
This is stupid from UEFA. This is a stupid set of governance, a stupid set of rules. If you don't want multi-club ownership, then don't allow it in the first place. Palace should be in the Europa League. His financial contribution enabled Palace to sail through choppy waters.
We're expected to find out by the end of the week whether Palace will be allowed to compete in the Europa League. And Owen Farrell has been named on the bench alongside Marcus Smith for the Lions' final warm-up game against a combined Australia-New Zealand 15 this weekend. It's his fourth tour.
You know, he's I suppose, lucky enough to play when he was very young, and you need the stars to align, I would have thought, as far as that concerned. When your first one starts, I suppose it allows you to have a look at that type of thing.
Remember, you can listen to that one live and exclusively on talkSPORT on Saturday morning.
Good evening, this is the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT with me, Max Scott, alongside Rory Jennings. We've been reacting to the news that Spurs have triggered the release clause of Morgan Gibbs-White. He's on his way for a medical tomorrow. Keep your calls and texts coming in, 03717 223344. We'll be getting to that later in the show, but it's not every day we get to speak to someone who's been right at the heart of one of the biggest football clubs in the world. Peter Moore served as CEO of Liverpool Football Club from 2017 to 2020, helping guide the club through one of its most successful modern eras, both on and off the pitch. Now he's back in the game in a different role, joining the ownership group of Polish side Wisla Krakow, and we're delighted to say that Peter joins us live on the line right now. Good evening, Peter. How are you?
I'm very well, Max. How are you? Hey, Rory.
How are you?
Yeah, doing well, thanks.
Very well.
Doing really well, thanks, Peter. Look, first, we'll start with Liverpool. We have to mention, of course, the tragic news that happened last week, of course, with the loss of Diogo Jota and his brother, Andre Silva. He came in just after you left, but what an impact he's had at the club and at Anfield.
Yeah, I mean, a tragedy beyond comprehension. We're 8 hours behind here in California. My wife shook me awake at 2 a.m. with the words, "Diogo is dead." And I couldn't grasp it. Neither of us went back to sleep. It was just horrific. And, ironically, I got to know him as a world-class EA Sports FIFA player. And what a super guy and a huge hole in the Liverpool family. And as a club, unfortunately, we've been tinged with tragedy for many, many years. I think the club is handling it brilliantly, sensitively, elegantly. And I, in fact, dropped a note to Billy Hogan, my successor there as CEO, and just congratulating him on the way the club did. But my heart is broken for the entire Liverpool family, both locally and globally, and of course for his family and his brother Andre. So it's a tragedy beyond comprehension.
Absolutely, Peter, and well said. You are totally correct. Liverpool have handled it brilliantly well. Can I ask you? You worked very closely, didn't you, during your time at Liverpool with Jurgen Klopp? How was it to work with such an icon?
Yeah, I mean, our lanes, our swim lanes are very clear. I handled the business and he handled the football. My job there, Rory, was to make sure Jurgen had everything he needed to be successful on the pitch. And my job was to basically run operations off the pitch. And I'm a huge Jurgen fan, as everybody that's around him. He was brilliant there. He understood Liverpool. The old Shankly quote is, Liverpool loves me and I love Liverpool, from the perspective of he got what the city was all about and what the football club means and meant at his time to the city and to the people around the world. So just an amazing human being. And I always say, if he wasn't in football, he could be a CEO of a corporation anywhere in the world. We miss him now. Obviously, we've done very well since Arne Slot's come in, but there's still a little bit of a hole left with the Teutonic Care Bear, as he's been called. Just an amazing guy.
Peter, I mean, well said about Jurgen Klopp. He certainly, warmed himself to that city and to that club without a doubt. But it goes without saying the transition to Arne Slot has been seamless. Before the season, absolutely nobody. Liverpool weren't even in the conversation, and what they've achieved last season has been nothing short of astonishing. How do you see the direction of the club moving forward under Arne Slot? You look at Florian Wirtz coming in, such a statement signing. Yeah. Surely they've got to be planning ahead for a long period of dominance in English and European football.
Look, I mean, Jurgen left a great legacy in a world-class squad, let's be fair. I think what Arne did, you look at players like Ryan Gravenberch and put him in a number 6 when all of the conversation, I'm sure on your show 12 months ago, was who is Liverpool going to buy to fill the Fabinho hole, that number 6 holding role. Slot saw things differently. He saw things differently with his Dutch players, Cody Gakpo, and made him out and out left-sided for much of the season. And I think he's got the best out of the players. Ownership has always believed in doing things right. They don't take a penny out of the club. They built infrastructure in the club, new main stand, new training center to build for long-term success. The squad now, obviously with Wirtz, Frimpong coming in, a strong squad is getting better, and they're doing what champions do. You build upon the platform of success.
Absolutely.
I'm listening to you talking about Spurs and all the other teams, Chelsea doing well here in the United States, obviously a tough game coming up against PSG, but it's the Premier League. And if you rest on your laurels, that bites you in the following season. Liverpool are not doing that very clearly.
Peter, it feels like you've slightly got the Midas touch, because we're talking about your connection to Liverpool Football Club, and obviously that went incredibly well. I'm also now reading that you were involved with the story of Wrexham.
Yeah. I was born and bred in Liverpool. My dad had a pub in Liverpool. My dad moved us in the mid-'60s to Wrexham, to a pub that my family still lives in a little village called Marford, which is between Wrexham and Chester. I stood on those terraces in the late 60s and all through the 70s before I moved to America. I played at the racecourse several times for Wrexham senior schoolboys. I played alongside Joey Jones and Mickey Thomas. You guys are too young to remember Joey and Mickey, but they're iconic players for Wrexham and later Liverpool and Manchester United and Chelsea. And so my linkage to Wrexham is tight. Rob McElhaney visited me when I returned here to California and tried to bring me back to Wrexham to run the club, and it just wasn't going to happen. But I said I'd be an advisor. I spent a lot of time there. I was there last month at the racecourse, looking at the new hybrid pitch, looking at where I used to stand as a lad in what was the Crispin Lane end in my days, now the Cop, where the new 5,500 seater stand is going in. Yeah. And what Wrexham is doing really well is they are not allowing their success on the pitch to outstrip the infrastructure that you need to be able to support that over a 3 to 5 year period. There's no doubt in my mind that they have Premier League aspirations, but as you guys well know, you've got to build an infrastructure in stadium and supporter amenities that would sustain that, both financially and from a supporter experience perspective. And everything there is looking great. They're getting ready to get the racecourse now back to where I remember as a lad, which was a home for internationals. And they're ready for the under-19 Euros next year and bringing the pitch itself, the stadium and the playing surface up to UEFA standards.
So, Peter, how long until they're in the Premier League, in your view?
Oh, don't get me going. I know we got betting odds coming up all day, but look, it's been back to back to back. And at some point you kind of settle down for a season or two. You allow yourself to build a platform because, as you well know, the Championship is one of the toughest leagues in the world to get out of. Yeah. And then once you're in the Premier League, you've got to stay there. And so I think knowing the team there, Michael Williamson, a great hire, the new CEO that they got from Inter Milan and previously here at Inter Miami in the US, got great experience. And I think, combine that with the Sean Harveys of this world, there's going to be a sustainability moment. Okay, let's catch our breath. Let's get our stadium where it needs to be. Let's get our squad where it needs to be. And they're being very aggressive in the transfer market right now.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And look, who knows? Could they be there next season? I don't know. But we'll see. I think if I remember rightly, they've got Southampton in the first game. So you've got a Premier League team in their first game in the Championship, and that'll be a real test. But, I put nothing beyond them, that's for sure.
So, Peter, I mentioned your Midas touch there. Let's talk about your latest move. You've joined the ownership group at Wisla Krakow. Is that correct?
Yeah.
How did that opportunity come about?
Well, a little bit of my video game world. I don't know if you know, but I was COO at EA. I was president of Sega, and I ran Xbox. So my depth in my career preceded me going to Liverpool Football Club in video games. And so there's a video game studio I've been helping in Krakow in Poland, and I was out there about 4 or 5 weeks ago, and I got to meet Jaroslav Królewski, who is the owner of Wisla Krakow. Went to the stadium, spent some time with him. I was very impressed with his vision for the club, with the core infrastructure of the stadium, the history of Wisla as a club that was a European contender for many, many years, went through difficult times, which a lot of these kind of mid-tier European league clubs are doing right now. And I don't want clubs that mean so much to the community. Wrexham's the same. Liverpool's the same on a grand scale, that means so much to the fans, to get left behind. And so spent a lot of time talking with Yaroslav, and we agreed that maybe I can add some value. And I've joined the ownership group as an advisor and an equity partner, and intend to help them as best I can get back to where they belong and give their people there in the beautiful city of Krakow a reason to believe, a reason to get back to where they once were. The promotion is very much a possibility for them this season, and that's what our goal is going to be. So I'm thrilled to join the club. I'm delighted that somebody at my age can still give back to what a club needs and what the people needs. And to me, it's always about, it's football and it's about lifting trophies, but it's more important to lift the people through football. And that's what we'll do at Wisla Krakow.
Let me say, Peter, it's nice to hear someone at the very top of a club, someone at the top of the game, speak about fans in that manner. I think so often we feel a separation from owners, and so often you feel like the best interests as a fan aren't necessarily. You don't necessarily feel like owners are custodians. You feel sometimes like owners are overlords, and so it's refreshing to hear that. I guess in light of that, having worked at every level, having the knowledge of the game that you do from a global perspective, where do you think the game's heading next in terms of engagement, in terms of modernisation, in terms of sustainability? Look at the Club World Cup now, and the amount of revenue for the clubs in it. I feel like there's a risk that at domestic level, that just creates an even bigger disparity. When we talk about the Premier League, for the last 2 seasons, the 3 clubs that have come up have gone back down. What do you think is just sort of the future of the game?
Well, it's a great question. You've got this balance now between our game, always been the biggest game in the world. Now we're in this world of always on streaming. Here in America, I can watch just about any game. When I arrived here 40 odd years ago, I had to wait for the newspapers on the next day to find out what the scores were. As I sit here today, I can watch every game around the world, including blackout games in the Premier League. And so media has taken over. The money is huge because live sports in today's world of media and content is the killer app. Always was, always will be. You can put all the movies and the reruns and the syndicated TV shows you like. Nothing draws an audience and thus draws subscriptions like live sports. And no live sport is bigger than top-class soccer. And that's where we're at. So you've got this balance. And look, I grew up in an era where you couldn't watch football on television, right? It was because the paranoia of the business model was, if we put these games on television, nobody goes to the stadium to watch. Now, that, of course, in the end was debunked. But I grew up in an era where the FA Cup final was the only game we could watch every single year. And we look forward to that, and it was a big event. Today, the sport is ubiquitous. The money is huge because people look at the demographic. When I say people, advertisers, sponsors, look at the demographic of a football fan. In a world that sitting here in America has never been so divisive, never been so torn apart because of political or religious beliefs, there is one common denominator that we can all agree on, and that's football. I mean, we'll shout at each other, we'll scream insults at each other, but we all agree, from Colombia to here in Santa Barbara, California, to there in London, we love football. And that love of football is monetized by brands, products, advertisers all around the world. Now, the counterbalance is, what does that mean for the Wisla Krakow, who in the Polish league that doesn't have a huge media deal? You've got to find ways to keep these clubs alive, flourishing, providing much needed entertainment for cities. If you know the history of Krakow post-World War II, these are cities. Wrexham's the same. I grew up in Wrexham. It was steel and coal. Liverpool, the tragedy. I mean, the stuff that we've gone through in Liverpool over 100 years. But again, it's football that binds us together, no matter our politics, our religions, and it's football. And love listening to, the angst of a Nottingham Forest fan just there 10 minutes ago. But this is what we love about the game.
Peter, it's been, I'm afraid, look, we've got to go to the break, but let me tell you, it's been an absolute pleasure and incredibly refreshing to hear you speak about the game from your perspective and what it means, as you say rightly, to so many football fans. I wish you the best of luck in Poland. I'm going to be keeping tabs on that. And you've got a Wisla fan in me and Rory, let me tell you.
There you go. All right. Football without fans is nothing. Let's never forget that.
Absolutely.
Well said, Peter. That is Peter Moore, the former CEO of Liverpool Football Club, now plying his trade and giving his expertise to Wisla Krakow in Poland. What an absolutely fantastic conversation. Right, you're listening to the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT with Ladbrokes, 18+, begambleaware.org. Good evening, you're listening to the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT with me, Max Scott. I'm alongside Rory Jennings. It has been a blockbuster day on talkSPORT because earlier today on White and Jordan, outgoing Crystal Palace owner John Textor joined the show in this very studio to discuss everything from Lyon's League One reprieve and Palace's European worries. Now, Textor did admit that he didn't think about the consequences of his multi-club ownership when it came to Crystal Palace.
Well, I think we all do as owners, but...
No, you.
Oh, me? Well, look, I'll admit to not even thinking about the issue. Of course, I have to. But I also read the rule. So please read the rule yourself. Like, everybody's talking about it like it's so obvious. The rule's very clear. If you have decisive influence, you may need to consider this. I don't. I didn't. If I had decisive influence, I wouldn't have been trying to sell the club starting in June of 2024. And if UEFA wants to look what they're doing, if you have a multi-club problem, they say, well, sell off your interest or get out of governance. Well, I did. I hired an investment bank. I was already out.
So if that evidence is so clear, why are UEFA dragging their feet on this?
One, I don't think they're dragging their feet. Two, I think they have safe harbor in this issue of decisive influence. But given the situation that Lyon was in, a possible relegation, why would they start this whole debate of people applying for appeal and stuff if they didn't have to? The draw isn't until, I don't know, when, August? They have time. Yeah. Now, it doesn't it feels like they're dragging their feet because we as fans, we want to know. We want our team in.
Yeah.
But honestly, I think they were shocked as anybody. UEFA approved Lyon through a rigorous financial sustainability review. Why would they think the DNCG would suddenly have a problem with that same issue?
Rory, I've got to say, what a guess, by the way, on White and Jordan. But regardless of what Palace fans think about John Textor, let us know. Get in touch, 03717 2223 But he was incredibly candid, admitting there that he didn't really think about it until he was next to Prince William lifting the cup for pictures. But in his mind, he didn't have a decisive influence, which is what the UEFA rules say. Therefore, Palace should be fine in terms of the Europa League. However, reports are suggesting that it's not going to be the case. Just to step back a minute, what do you think about the multi-club ownership rules? Because it seems to me, mate, that if UEFA allow clubs to be owned by multiple owners, you can't have your cake and eat it. If they then get into the same tournament, it seems a massive contradiction. I feel for Palace fans.
Look, the two things can coexist here. Crystal Palace should be allowed to compete in Europe. They earn the right. They beat Manchester City. They won their first ever trophy. Eberechi Eze should not be robbed of the opportunity to potentially lead that club into Europe. They earned it. It would be a travesty to rob Palace of the opportunity to play in Europe. However, it's so murky. All of this multi-club model thing, it's so murky. And I do think that, we heard John Textor there talking to White and Jordan, saying explicitly that he read the rules and felt like he was in tune with them.
He wasn't in breach.
Exactly. So there is a fluidity to the rules. These things need to be cut and dry. These things need to be so simple. It should be, if you own one club, you simply can't be part of another club. It should be that simple, because it causes major problems. Because let's use, do you know what, so that I'm not accused of any bias here, let's use my club, let's use Chelsea as an example. There is a world where, imagine a situation where Chelsea and Strasbourg are completely owned by the same entity. So it's in the owner's interest for one of, or both of those clubs to do well. Let's imagine a situation where one of those clubs is doing very well, that the other one isn't. But the other one happens to have a star player. Chelsea, for example, have an off-season. It's not going very well. Strasbourg have a great season, and they are competing for Liga. There is no reason why a transfer of Cole Palmer, for example, doesn't happen between the multi-club model just to facilitate one club and therefore one owner succeeding. It's a mess.
You've said there that things need to be cut and dry. Look, despite the fact I'm a Forest fan, and Forest would benefit from Palace being demoted to the Conference League or kicked out of Europe altogether, I don't want that, because I don't think it's the right thing. Palace have deserved it. Now, do you think I just think UEFA might well want to try and make an example out of Crystal Palace? That's what concerns me.
It would be cowardly. It would be cowardly, but I have a feeling that they might make an example out of Crystal Palace as well, because it feels like the easy option to make the example out of. It would be a travesty for Crystal Palace to suffer on the pitch for a miscalculation in the boardroom. Penalise them if they must be penalised at all. Penalise them in the boardroom.
You talk about a problem at board level. John Textor's been the boogeyman here, but as he said, he had no decisive influence on that club. Steve Parish is the main man. Do you think that Steve Parish maybe needs to cop a little bit more flack for this? Because ultimately he's the person that hasn't ensured that the club have got their affairs in order by that March the 1st deadline.
Yes, this is it. And we can be very pedantic here, and I do think that there is almost a justification for saying, well, Crystal Palace knew the rules and they didn't abide by the rules to the very letter of the law, and therefore they should be banned. You could argue that. You could rationalise that theory. They knew that if they didn't sort this out by the deadline, that if they ended up winning the FA Cup or qualifying for Europe via league position, that they would be in jeopardy of losing that spot.
Yeah.
And this is the problem, because under the letter of the law, they have broken the rules. They haven't played by the same rules as everyone else, and there has been a miscalculation. There has been an admin error in the boardroom, and maybe you could argue that they should be penalised for that. I think that the merit of the sporting achievement shouldn't be stolen from them. They did what they wanted to do on the pitch. The players on the pitch did what they wanted to do. So to penalise the players, and more importantly, penalise those fans. Like Crystal Palace have never followed their team into Europe. They've had the misfortune of having to watch their big rivals Brighton follow their team into Europe, and Crystal Palace, a far bigger club. Crystal Palace fans going into Europe, would be brilliant for football. Like, they take 10,000. You know their first away day. Imagine if they ended up, I don't know who they could end up, but imagine they end up playing.
Yeah, mate, they travel well.
Yeah,
don't they?
imagine if Crystal Palace ended up playing in Rotterdam. They'll take 10,000 fans. It would be a great spectacle, and it would be a shame for football to rob them of that opportunity. Going back to what you said, though, I do think I agree with you. I think that they could be in big trouble here.
Yeah, well, Collie gets in touch. She says, folks, great show. Let's get a multi-club ownership VAR system. That'll make everything cut and dry, won't it? Brackets, not. Yeah, I mean, look, one of the things is that could happen is that my Nottingham Forest actually benefit from this. Ben, the Forest fans, got in touch. He said, Forest won't benefit from anything at the minute. A week ago, I thought we'd actually have the chance on winning the Conference League. Now we'll be lucky to get through the Conference League playoffs. Big Marinakis needs to get shopping ASAP. Keep your texts and calls coming out. 03717 22 344. In the next hour, more transfers to come, and we'll look at the big stories circulating on talksport.com.
John Texter believes Crystal Palace should be allowed to compete in the Europa League next season, saying that he doesn't infringe on UEFA's multi-club ownership rules.
We shouldn't talk about whether or not I have 43% vote or whether I have a 25% vote. We should talk about zero.
Yeah.
Because the document that I signed, when I signed onto the shares, says clearly I'm not entitled to have any role in management decisions.
Palace's situation in Europe is still up in the air after Lyon's appeal against relegation in France was successful. Texter was also asked about his relationship with Chairman Steve Parish.
His ambition every year is to avoid relegation. Our ambition is to climb the table. Who thought we could go from bankruptcy to winning South America in 2.5 years down there? I mean, that was crazy.
We're expected to find out by the end of the week whether Palace will be allowed to compete in the Europa League. Transfers and Tottenham are confident of completing a move for Nottingham Forest midfielder Morgan Gibbs-White by triggering his £60 million release clause. This after the signing of Mohamed Kudus is all but done. But why did West Ham sell?
I couldn't get my head around it because he's definitely one of your best players, right? One of your your most creative players, and that's one thing I think that they lack. West Ham is a little bit of creativity. It almost feels like if Jarrod Bowen doesn't get it done, then who is going to get it done? And the fact that he's going again, we spoke about Paquetá and his situation.
Yeah.
They've got Somerville, who I really like, who's good at Leeds. It's a bizarre one.
Arsenal have confirmed the signing of Christian Norgard from Brentford and are to formally approach Palace over Eberechi Eze. And there's optimism that Blair Kinghorn may be fit in time for the Lions' opening test against Australia next weekend. He hobbled off during yesterday's warm-up against the Brumbies. Owen Farrell, meanwhile, has been named on the bench for the final warm-up game against a combined Australia-New Zealand 15 on Saturday in what is now his 4th tour.
You know, he's I suppose lucky enough to play when he was very young, and you know you need the stars to align. I would have thought, as far as that concerned, when your first one starts, I suppose it allows you to have a look at that type of thing.
Hear the whole Lions tour live on talkSPORT this summer.
Good evening, this is the Transfer Insiders. I'm Max Scott alongside Rory Jennings. This hour we'll get stuck into today's top transfer story as Morgan Gibbs-White is set for a medical tomorrow ahead of his move to Spurs. Spurs fans, is this one of the greatest times to be a Spurs fan? Forest fans, what does it mean for you? Are you crying your eyes out like me? Arsenal fans, Noni Madueke could be joining from London rivals Chelsea. Is he the man to get you over the line and win you the league? We want to hear from you. 03717 223344. And of course, we've got all the latest top stories from talksport.com. This is the Transfer Insiders here on talkSPORT. OK, we got to start the hour with this. Over the past few hours, Spurs have moved quickly. They've moved decisively. They've been active in the transfer market, both for West Ham's Mohamed Kudus and now Nottingham Forest magician Morgan Gibbs-White. He's set for a medical tomorrow, and Kudus is also set to join Thomas Frank's European champions. Let's discuss Spurs with our resident Spurs fan and regular on Inside Spurs, live from New York, no less. It's Majestic. How are you, Madge, mate?
How are we, guys? All right?
Yes, sir.
Well, I'm absolutely devastated because you've ripped the beating heart out of my Nottingham Forest. I mean, you must...
I know, mate. I'm sorry.
You must be absolutely delighted with how clinical Daniel Levy and Thomas Frank have been in this window.
Well, you use words there on the intro about clinical and decisive and getting business done. It's just not words I associate with Tottenham normally. and you know, it's very true. Rory would know. We've criticised it together in the past with the way Spurs are. You know, on the final word with Pards on a Sunday, we talked about the start of last season. And Pards, you know, he's an experienced Premier League manager. He said the signings that we made last summer were not a team that looked like they were attempting to go to the top 4. That wasn't the signings of a club. You know, the Archie Grays, etc., the Bergvalls, etc., who are great talents, but they're not ready-made Premier League stars. Now, arguably, as you said, you know how good Morgan Gibbs-White is, Max, from watching him, you know? And the thing is as well, Kudus as well. I know obviously he had a good start with West Ham and then he kind of almost down tools a little bit, but we know there's a quality player there.
Absolutely.
To me, signing Premier League proven players, paying the money, getting the job done. So Thomas Frank, and getting him again for the Super Cup. Don't forget, it's got a very difficult game against the almighty PSG. Do you know what I mean? Which looked like it was going to be 10-0. It might be 5-0 now with those boys in. But yeah, it's exciting. It's exciting. And you know what? Looking at the forward line potentially for Spurs next season is really exciting under Thomas Frank's new revolution.
Do you know what, Majestic? I think it's so impressive the way that Tottenham have done their business. Like bringing in these players, it's the best player from the Nottingham Forest setup. It's one of, if not the best player from the West Ham setup. They both finished above you. And then the way that you got the business done. There hasn't been this long pursuit. It hasn't been comparable to what Manchester United have done for Brian and Burmo. You've just got the job done. This is so not in keeping with everything that we've known about Tottenham over the past couple of decades. Do you feel that there has been a shift? The day that you won that trophy in Bilbao, it's as if Daniel Levy has had an epiphany moment.
Well, he has to act like this, doesn't he, now? Because he rolled the dice and he's rolled the dice time and time again.
Yeah.
And he's come back from disaster to now at the point of He's got that sort of the trophy hoodoo off his back. We have everything set up. Every single person, doesn't matter what club you support, you know. And I'm talking about professional players as well. I've spoke to Premier League players that talk about our stadium and our setup as a football club and how desirable it is as a football player. It's all in place. All that we've been missing is the correct players. Now, you know, the irony of it all is last season we weren't goal shy. It was the other way, of course, with the system we were playing under Ange. So to add to already what was scoring goals, you know, got Brennan Johnson, Kulusevski, etc. And obviously we made Tell a permanent signing as well, and I think he's going to come really good under Thomas Frank. Watch this space. And, you know, to add these two Premier League proven players, as you said, Nottingham Forest, who were brilliant last season, finished above us. You know, West Ham finished above us. Like, you know, I feel for the West Ham fan base here because, you know, for them losing Declan Rice to Arsenal a couple of years ago, which was an inevitable thing, but then to lose Kyrgios to Spurs, and I know they're not the biggest fans of Spurs, they'll be seething and they'll be asking questions about their club right now. But from my point of view, as a Spurs fan, as you said, getting business done clinically and just decisiveness of it all has just been beautiful.
Madge, I've got to ask, you know, for me, Morgan Gibbs-White is twice the player of James Maddison. So where do you expect Morgan Gibbs-White to start ahead of James Maddison? They are, you know, they're like-for-like players. They play in the same position. They want that space. They want that control over the game. They want to conduct things. You know, Maddison wasn't trusted. You could tell by Ange Postecoglou the entire time. He obviously struggled with his fitness. He is a wonderful player. You know, I'm not saying he isn't, but I think on form, you look at what Gibbs-White achieved with Forest. Do you think that he slots straight into Thomas Frank's starting 11? And do you worry about losing James Maddison?
Listen, all of the best teams have got a player in every position times two, haven't they? Yeah. And good players. And that is the only way to become a top club. You look at Manchester City, and of course, that's what the pinnacle is, isn't it, really, for everyone looking, because their bench is phenomenal. So the way that Spurs conducted their business, to have James Maddison and Morgan Gibbs-White battling it out, that's exciting, especially for Spurs fans. And we've always argued about a style of play and the Spurs way, etc. These are two players that really display those attributes, and we've seen it with Maddison. And, you know, I think as Spurs fans, we've seen the best of James Maddison, and sometimes maybe not enough. And I know Rory and Maddison have had a couple of back and forths, but I think sometimes the criticism is right, because, you know, you can say he doesn't turn up all of the time, but one thing Madders does is he turns up in the big moments. He was absolutely one of the big parts of the European success. You know, winning that penalty in Frankfurt, and, you know, even in other games during the group stages, he is a great player, and I feel with the new style and the Thomas Frank coming in as well, that's the really exciting thing for me with Thomas Frank is how he's going to improve players like a James Maddison. He's so likeable, isn't he, as a manager?
Well, I'm not sure. I thought you meant James Maddison. Yeah. Rory was looking across the table from me, not so sure.
No. But listen, Thomas Frank, you know, even Rory, you listen to him talk. Exactly. And, you know, for me, I talk about it a lot because, you know, I've had the personal privilege of, when I grew up in North London, you know, Justin Cochrane was someone who was a big inspiration to us as youngsters in North London, because he used to come to our football games, grassroots, and I've seen how he's progressed. And just watching some of the videos of Justin with Thomas Frank, I think they're going to be able to galvanise that young group of players. And just sort of even the demographic of lads that are there now, 23s, 24s, you know, they've all got the similar characteristics. You know, the vibe and energy of a football dressing room is so important. And I think, you know, fair play to Ange. He had that moment at the end of last season where if you watch the speech he gave the boys before the final, it was brilliant, and I'm so glad he won it. He also a legend, and now it's the start of Tottenham trying to behave like a Big Six club. The hoodoo of the trophy's done now it's time to progress, and it is the new chapter. As I said before, it's almost like a Pochettino 2.0.
Okay, so with everything in mind, Madge, and I think that we're in agreement, by the way. Very rare that you and I agree on Tottenham, but we are in total agreement here. I think that you're getting everything right. I think Thomas Frank is an excellent appointment, the exact appointment that you should be making off the back of what you achieved under Postecoglou. I think signing Mohamed Kudus could go down as one of the best signings of the summer, and obviously signing Morgan Gibbs-White, an England international, is a statement signing.
Johan Lange needs a lot of credit for this as well. No doubt. You can see him and Thomas Frank together, and of course the Danish connection. They're plotting, and they're talking about the way that they want to have people coming from the academy into the first team and sort of bridging that gap, because that's been a problem for Spurs. Where Daniel Levy brought in the Contes and the Mourinhos, it meant, you've already talking about Madueke possibly going to Arsenal from Chelsea. That's a Spurs lad. That's come out of the Spurs academy. He had to go to PSV Eindhoven. You know, we've seen it with Edwards when he went to Sporting Lisbon, etc. Someone we looked to buy back. So even things like that, that's really exciting. So it's just now is the time to crack on. And the next thing is the players taking a bit of responsibility now, because they've always been able to get away with it. Where's the excuses now? No trophy hoodoo, Champions League football, the best stadium, this, best training ground, that, making the transfers, doing the right things. Exciting times, and let's see what the players can do.
You're not wrong, Madge. Look, your Spurs lot might have broken my heart and Forest fans' heart today with Morgan Gibbs-White, but let me tell you, you're right. I think it's incredibly exciting times. Madge, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate. Enjoy the rest of your trip in New York.
Have a great show, chaps.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers, mate. That's majestic. Spurs fan, talkSPORT's very own. You can tell he's brimming with excitement. And if I was a Spurs fan, don't get me wrong, I would be as well. Right, let's get the latest in the women's Euros. Ian Abrahams is watching Finland versus Switzerland.
And 14 minutes gone, Finland 0, Switzerland 0. Remember, Switzerland, a win or a draw sees them through to the quarterfinals. For the first time in their history on home turf, Finland need a win or they are out. And so far, it's the Swiss that have made all the running. Maritza Villa had a shot that was blocked. Reesen with a scissor kick 5 yards out, didn't make contact when she should have scored. Schertelab from distance just in the shot saved. And for Mali, a back heel from 6 yards out that went just wide. Finland have offered very little going forward so far. 14 gone in Geneva. It's Switzerland 0, Finland 0.
Also in Group A, leaders Norway taking on Iceland. There's been a goal, Angelina Kelly.
Yes, it's Norway 0, Iceland 1. Sveindish Jondottir gets Euro 2025's 50th goal, but Iceland's first goal of the tournament 6 minutes in. A corner sails into the box. Alexandra Johansdottir heads the ball towards goal from about 12 yards out. Norway goalkeeper Cecilia Fiskerstrand gets two hands to it, but it comes back out, and Jonsdottir is there to smack it into the back of the net. It was checked by VAR. It did look offside at one point, but the goal does stand. Iceland said that they were there for the 1,500 fans that they have in the stadium tonight to put on a show for them. They were doing it for pride, and it's safe to say that so far they have done just that. Norway 0, Iceland 1.
UEFA Women's Euro 2025 update on talkSPORT with McDonald's. Got Big McDonald's hunger? The new Big Arch is here. Available from 11 a.m. at participating restaurants.
You're listening to the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT with Ladbrokes, 18+, begambleaware.org. Next up, we'll speak Chelsea with Mr. Chelsea himself. Good evening. You're listening to the Transfer Insiders with me, Max Scott, alongside Mr. Chelsea, Rory Jennings himself. We're also live on YouTube and on your smart TV. Now, in a moment, we're going to start looking at some more transfer news. But there has been a goal in the Women's Euros. Angelina Kelly.
It's Norway 1, Iceland 1. Iceland's lead was short-lived. Norway was searching for a quick response, and they've got just that as their 20-year-old Signe Gogseth, who's been dubbed Norway's most exciting young talent, gets a goal in the 15th minute. A corner comes in from Atletico Madrid's Vildebo Risa on the right, across the face of goal. Gogseth is stood right by the penalty spot, pretty much unmarked, and just volleys it into the bottom right corner. Norway 1, Iceland 1.
Brilliant stuff, Angelina. Of course, we'll be keeping you updated on all the Group A matches in the Women's Euros tonight. But time now to look at the latest football action with Ladbrokes.
The big preview on talkSPORT with Ladbrokes. Supercharge your odds with our Odds Boost button. Selected markets applies to first £50 of stake. Terms apply. 18+. Gambleaware.org.
Yeah, look, there's been so many transfers ongoing and negotiations since our last show. And since we're with Mr. Chelsea himself, Rory Jennings, let's start off with one of the outgoings. Arsenal in talks to sign Chelsea winger Noni Madueke. Personal terms have been agreed and the fee could be around £50 million. Rory, how do you feel about that? You happy with you shipping off all your players to Chelsea that you don't necessarily need, or would you like to see him stay at Chelsea?
I don't particularly care whether Noni Madueke leaves or not. I don't think this is going to be detrimental to our aspirations. I don't think it's going to particularly move the needle for what we're trying to achieve. And I think if Chelsea are to be the team that I want us to be, I don't think that Noni Madueke is anywhere near our starting lineup. Now, I think that there is a world where Madueke could become a good player. He could be, the player that we're talking about in 2028. Maybe he is a really good player. But at the moment, I don't think that it's particularly impressive for Arsenal to take him. I think that it could be detrimental for Arsenal to take him. I don't necessarily think.
How could it be if he's a decent player, which I'm sure we agree he is? He's not a world beater, but he's a good player. If he's a good player, how could it be detrimental to Arsenal? Obviously, want to build depth in their squad.
The reason why will be because of the job that they want him to do. So if they're bringing him in for depth, then maybe it's a good signing. If they're bringing him in to nurture him, to allow him to become the player that he may become in the next 2 to 3 years, then fine. But I don't feel like Arsenal need that as a signing. I feel like Arsenal now, as of today, they are a couple of tweaks away from winning the league.
Yeah,
they aren't signing a player that could be good in 3 years' time. That's not what they need. So I don't quite understand it. Now, if he's going there to back up Eze, so let's pretend that they sign Eberechi Eze and they also sign Noni Madueke, and Madueke is there to help the front three out wherever it is necessary, then fine. But if for some reason Madueke at 50 odd million quid is going in there not to sit on the bench and back up the squad, but to be a starter, Arsenal won't win the league.
I don't think that's the case, though. I think you look at Arsenal's interest, not only obviously in Victor Gyökeres as a striker, but on wider players like Rodrigo from Real Madrid, like Eberechi Eze.
How can you say Rodrigo and Eze makes total sense to me?
Yes. So that my point
isn't part of that.
But my point is, I don't think Arsenal are bringing him to start. So I don't think they can be criticised for sort of downgrading.
More than 50 million quid to sit on the bench.
But I think that if you look at the market now, look at the price of Alanga, look at the price of Mbeumo, Cunha, players like that, that seems to be the market value for players like Noni Madueke.
But not to sit on the bench. The players that you've just compared to in terms of price, this is a lot of money. It will be a big percentage of the overall money that Arsenal will spend this summer. So look, maybe they're going to spend. Maybe they are just going to be like splashy.
I wonder if they're leveraging it. I wonder if they're getting Noni Madueke lined up so that if they can't get Eze, so they can use that as leverage in another deal. And that might be a very wise thing for them to do. But one thing I want to ask you, Rory, is why this is Noni Madueke is on a long list of players that Chelsea have sold to London rivals Arsenal. Jorginho, Kai Havertz, two players who I think have really added to Arsenal. Petr Cech. Last stages of his career, David Luiz, not the best version. Kepa Arrizabalaga, yes, he did well at Bournemouth last season, but he's certainly not in Maresca's plans. William Gallas, why is it that Chelsea are constantly selling their players to Arsenal?
There is an interesting relationship between the clubs. I agree, and also what you have to remember is that as much as what's gone in that direction has really upset Arsenal fans, that the best part of this entire saga is what came the other way. Yeah. Cesc Fabregas winning the league. Cesc Fabregas, it felt symbolic. I remember being at Stamford Bridge as Cesc Fabregas picks the ball up and in the Chelsea blue lobs the current Arsenal goalkeeper Petr Cech, and we go on to win the league. Like, it felt symbolic. We had one of their... Like, do you remember when he was coming through at Arsenal? Everybody was talking about Cesc Fabregas. Everybody was talking about these two young Spanish players that Arsenal had, Cesc Fabregas and a guy called Fran Moreda. And suddenly, one of those players.
But you got Fabregas from Barca, though. It wasn't.
Yeah, we did, but it felt so Arsenal, didn't it? It felt like he was going back to Arsenal, and it definitely doesn't sit comfortably with. No,
I can imagine.
And obviously, Ashley Cole came and won the European Cup, and I remember the almost like the gymnastics, the contortion that Arsenal fans were going through when we got Ashley Cole, where they were sort of saying, well, they did better out of the deal because we had to pay £5 million and they got William Gallas. I remember them genuinely saying, well, it doesn't matter that Ashley Cole's gone because Gail Clichy is better. That's the kind of thing that they were saying. So no, look, each signing exists in a vacuum. Simply because you've done business with Chelsea before in the form of Willian and it hasn't worked out, that doesn't mean that Raheem Sterling isn't going to work because it didn't work for Willian. But there is some sort of symmetry, isn't there? Where everybody that they've picked up, literally everybody that they've picked up. And sometimes what they do, Max, you would have heard them, they argue. Like, I'd say that nobody they've picked up from Chelsea has worked. They will say, Kai Havertz has worked, and then I burst out laughing.
Kai Havertz has worked. He's been their top goal scorer. He's been key to their success.
Exactly. And if he'd scored enough goals, being their top goal scorer and still not winning the league, if he'd scored enough goals, they would have won the league.
But he's still been a good player for Arsenal. You can't deny that.
I don't believe he's been a success story. Not really. I think that they've managed to make the best of a bad situation. They signed him initially to play in midfield. That didn't work. They then put him up front, but they're still linked with... If he'd really worked up front, they wouldn't be so desperate for Gyökeres. But if he really worked in midfield, they wouldn't have signed Marino.
He's done the best out of playing out of position.
A bad bunch, yeah.
No, not out of a bad bunch. They've been absolutely fabulous couple of years, not been able to get over the line, Arsenal. But you can't say that Kai Havertz scoring the goals he has, putting Arsenal in that position, they were nowhere near it. You can't say just because he's not won a Premier League that he's not been a success at the club.
Do you honestly see Kai Havertz being a good player for Arsenal? Do you look at Kai Havertz leading the line for Arsenal and think that makes Arsenal capable of winning a title, capable of winning a Champions League? Because when I see Kai Havertz leading the line for Arsenal, I find it comical. I think they're such a brilliant team. I think Arteta has done so well. He has redefined the club since he's been there. He's changed them from a punchline. They were a joke.
And he's managed to do that, as you say, by playing Kai Havertz out of position. That is a success.
No. If they hadn't spent 70 million on Kai Havertz and had spent the 70 million on Ivan Toney, they would have a league title to show for it. They didn't do that. They made a mistake in not doing that. They tried to polish the mistake by redefining Kai Havertz from a midfielder, which they tried to do. They then put him up front and they've tried to pretend that they don't need an out-and-out goal scorer because they score enough goals in the team. They've got half a dozen players.
You can't not criticise Arsenal for not signing a striker. Obviously, they need to sign a striker. It's why
Kai Havertz is a striker, isn't he? Why do they need to sign a striker?
Well, he's a versatile attacking player who's still managed to score a lot of goals in the Premier League, and you can't turn your nose up at that. Yes, Arsenal haven't won the league. Yes, they're going for Victor Gyökeres, but Kai Havertz is still going to be an absolutely key player for Mikel Arteta. So I don't think you've got to put your London loyalties aside, and you've got to be able to have the nuance to say, of course, he's still been a good signing for Mikel Arteta.
I honestly feel like this is he hasn't succeeded. You can suggest that he has because he scored more goals up front than anyone else, and maybe they're a better team with him in the team than without. But they spent £70 million on a player that ultimately has led them to nothing.
You spent £1.5 billion and you've not won a title under Todd Bowley. Do you think surely you can apply the same logic to Chelsea?
Yeah, well, different conversation.
You've been the biggest spenders in the Premier League.
Oh yeah, if you want to make it a Conference League, Chelsea have many problems, and the way that Todd Bowley spends money, I don't like. That has nothing to do with insulating Kai Havertz from criticism at Arsenal, though.
But surely if you apply the same logic, Chelsea haven't had a successful season, even though they qualified for the Champions League, even though they won the Conference League, because you spent over £1 billion and not managed to win the Premier League.
We can make this a Chelsea conversation. I don't like the way Chelsea spend money. We aren't spending money to try and build the best possible
But surely
team.
It's been unsuccessful. Based on your logic.
So far, it's been unsuccessful. Last season was a successful season.
Well, it can't have done because you spent £1.5 billion. You not won the Premier League. You're complaining that Arsenal spent 70 million on Kai Havertz and didn't win the league.
But
you spent over £1 billion. You've not won a Premier League. So surely last season was unsuccessful for Chelsea.
But the two things exist in totally different in totally different
areas. It's the same logic.
No, it isn't.
Spent a lot of money, not achieved a Premier League.
Because Chelsea,
you're hammering Arsenal with that stick.
No, I'm not really hammering Arsenal with the stick of spending lots of money. I'm hammering Arsenal with one particular decision that they made in signing one particular player for £70 million. That if they had spent that money elsewhere, they would have won a league. Chelsea have spent money in a ridiculous way. Chelsea have spent money in order to try and elevate the value of the club. We don't buy players that are the best players for the team. We buy only players that are young, and we're trying to do something totally different. I don't like the Chelsea model at all. I don't like what's going on. But using Chelsea as some sort of force field to insulate Kai Havertz from criticism doesn't work, I'm afraid.
Arsenal fans, get in touch. Has Kai Havertz been a failure at Arsenal? Has he been unsuccessful as a player? Like we're hearing from Rory Jennings. Get in touch, 03717 22 3344. Get your texts in, 81089. And now we are going to go into the break. You are listening to the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT.
The big preview on talkSPORT with Ladbrokes. Supercharge your odds with our odds boost button. Selected markets applies to first £50 of stake. Terms apply. 18+. Gambleaware.org.
Good evening, this is the Transfer Insiders with me, Max Scott, alongside Rory Jennings. We're going to get some more transfer news and updates from our reporter Ben Jacob. But first, with the headlines. Oh, we've not got any headlines. What am I talking about? It's the evening, right? Well, first of all, we're going to go straight to the Women's Euros. Ian Abrams is watching.
And it's Finland 0, Switzerland 0. We're just past the half-hour mark in Geneva. And remember, Switzerland, a winner or draw, puts them through to a history-making quarter-final. For Finland, they absolutely have to win this, otherwise they are out of the tournament. And they've had the best chance in the last 10 minutes or so. A corner, Savinius at the far post, had a free header saved by Peng, the Chelsea goalkeeper, Chelsea backup goalkeeper, she'll be this year, behind Hannah Hampton. But it was a good chance for Finland. 33 gone, Finland 0, Switzerland 0.
Brilliant stuff. What's happening in the other game, Angelina Kelly?
It's Norway 2, Iceland 1, and it's another goal for Sine Gorpset in the 26th minute. There's a reason that she is one of Norway's top young talents. Bo Riise provides her second assist as she plays the ball to Gorpset. She carries it to the edge of the D and smacks it with her left foot into the bottom corner at the near post. Gorpset has been exceptional so far and will surely be giving her manager Gemma Granger food for thought about if she should be starting the quarter-final on Wednesday. Norway 2, Iceland 1.
UEFA Women's Euro 2025 update on talkSPORT with McDonald's. Got Big McDonald's hunger? The new Big Arch is here. Available from 11 a.m. at participating restaurants.
We'll get to some of the latest breaking transfer news in a moment, but just before we broke, Rory and I were having a heated debate about Arsenal and about Kai Havertz. Rory Jennings himself claiming that he's not been a success at Arsenal. Ryan is an Arsenal fan. What do you make of it, mate?
How's it going, guys? You okay?
Yeah, good, thanks, mate.
Yeah, good. It's a weird one because when Havertz signed for Arsenal, I was as clinical in as anyone really in terms of whether he'd succeed or not, and I was quite frustrated by him signing. So I was, not really a fan. However, when you consider he was top goal scorer for Arsenal last season, you think you could talk about success in terms of. Were Arsenal successful last year, the year before, the year before. They finished second 3 years in a row. You could argue they're third or fourth in Europe if you consider Champions League positions. There's no doubting that Arsenal are on a success, journey. I know fans will say trophies are the be-all and end-all, which is fair enough. However, Havertz was a massive part of that, even with injuries being top scorer. So you talk about Morgan Gibbs-White, 60 million and how amazing a deal this is. Then surely you think, Havertz was at 65 million was a bargain at the end of the day.
Ryan, they're completely different. What Tottenham are trying to do is rebuild. What Arsenal are trying to do is do a few tweaks to win the league. You are at a different level. Like when I was having this conversation with Max moments ago, Max was comparing it to Chelsea. We're at a different stage of our journey. Arteta speaks about phases all the time, doesn't he? What phase is Arteta in? He's in phase 6 now. He's meant to win the league at phase 5. And he would have won the league at phase 5 if Kai Havertz had been that prolific, prodigious striker that they desperately were craving for.
Yeah, but he's not that.
No, exactly. He's not that. But you bought it. You spent 70 million on him. So that summer, when you spent 70 million on him, if you'd spent that elsewhere and signed somebody who will stick the ball in the back of the net, if you had signed Ivan Toney, then do you think you would have won a title by now?
Yeah, I'm not against that at all. And I've been arguing for the last 2 years we needed a striker. And I don't think Kai Havertz you can blame him for that because, yes, we should have signed a striker 2 years ago, let's be honest. We all know that. And now we've got players screaming to play for us. And there's no denying that. Obviously, you're a massive Chelsea fan. You can't argue that right now the best players in the world, give or take, other than your Mbappes and so on, want to be playing for Arsenal.
I think Arsenal are in an excellent position. I really do. I think that Arteta's done a good job, and I think the one thing that you can say Arteta has done is change you from you're a bit of a punchline. There was a joke quality to Arsenal. You're now a serious club. You beat Real Madrid home and away. You go to the Bernabeu and win. You're a serious club, and I get shudders thinking that you're going to win the league. And that's a compliment to Arteta because we can see a world where you could win the league. But we have to stop pretending that Kai Havertz has been some sort of revelation when at the very, very best, he's been fine, mediocre, done a job, made the best of a bad situation. It hasn't succeeded.
Right, Ryan, the Arsenal fan, making it absolutely clear, Rory, that he doesn't agree with you. I also agree with Ryan. Kai Havertz has been, I think, a fantastic signing for Arsenal. Granted, the fact that they do
you need to consult your OED. Striker. You need to consult your OED for the word fantastic.
OED, Oxford English Dictionary.
Yeah, consult it, look up the word fantastic, and then apply it to Kai Havertz. I think
scoring those goals in the Premier League for an Arsenal side without a striker is an absolute credit to him. But we've got another caller, Daryl, the Nottingham Forest fan. Daryl, talk to me. Are you crying your eyes out like me, or are you happy with the money for Morgan Gibbs-White?
No, I'm crying my eyes out.
Yeah, good lad, as you should be. What next? I mean, do you think we can replace him, or as me and Rory are suggesting, he's irreplaceable at Forest?
He is. He's probably the best player we've had in a while. And why are we selling him? Why are we selling Elanga just after we qualified for Europe?
They're slightly different, aren't they? With the sale of Anthony Elanga, it doesn't feel quite as poignant as the sale of Morgan Gibbs-White, does it, Max?
No, and exactly. I mean, that's my point, is I don't think Anthony Elanga, and it's no criticism of him, look, I think he contributed to 30% of Forest goals last season, but I don't think he's in the top 3 most important players. I think it's Morgan Gibbs-White, Murillo and Milenkovic at the back. But it is absolutely devastating. One thing I will say for the record is it is devastating. But behind the scenes, clearly, there will have been interest from Morgan Gibbs-White as well. Spurs aren't going to trigger that release clause for £60 million, which has really upset Forest fans, understandably. But they're not going to enter those talks unless they think that he's absolutely keen. Understandably, he is. However, what I will say is that Evangelos Marinakis is going to back the club. Daryl, just quickly, who do you want to see? Park Morgan Gibbs-White, it looks like he's gone. As devastating as it is, who do you want to see the club bring in so that we can go and win the Conference League next season?
I mean, who is available? That's going to be like him.
Well, I would say Harvey Elliott. For sure, he's had an absolutely brilliant under-21s Euros. He's been great for Liverpool, but been struggling for minutes. Would you not be happy with that?
Yeah, I think we're okay, but
he's not got.
That's the spirit. That's the spirit.
Well, look, he's deflated. He's deflated, and I understand it, Daryl. Thank you so much for the call. Absolutely gutting for Forest fans, but Forest's loss is Spurs' gain, no doubt. Right, delighted to discuss more of the transfer rumours. We're going to get to Ben Jacobs in a moment. Rory, I've got to ask you, though. I think Harvey Elliott could be on the cusp of becoming a player like Morgan Gibbs-White if he can get first-team football for a side that is competing in the Premier League and playing regularly, playing in Europe. Do you share my optimism about Harvey Elliott?
Yeah, bear with me on this.
You don't sound it, mate.
No, they're two different conversations. Do I rate Harvey Elliott? Absolutely. I think he's a lovely little footballer. I think he's very unlucky that he's been at Liverpool in the sense that he would basically be a starter for every Premier League team apart from the Premier League team that he's at. I think that Harvey Elliott's best position is one of the wide forwards.
Do you? You're
never going to get that at Liverpool. You're never going to get that opportunity. But you may like everything I've said up until this point regarding the brilliance of Harvey Elliott. You're not going to like this. Let me ask you the question rather than giving you my opinion. If you're Harvey Elliott, does Nottingham Forest whet your appetite?
Yeah. European football,
Conference League football. Let's conference.
European football. I don't need correcting on this. It's European football. It's a club with clearly massive ambition. A club that has had an amazing season last season, and you're going to be the main man replacing the main man. Let me throw another name at you, James McAtee. There's been reports suggesting that Manchester City are willing to listen to offers for him. Again, captain the England under-21s.
McAtee, absolutely. Everything that you said about what Nottingham Forest can offer, big club, brilliant stadium, excellent fan base, yeah, absolutely. McAtee makes sense. I believe that Harvey Elliott will be slightly more ambitious. I think Harvey Elliott is a really brilliant footballer. You look at what he's done for England in the kids tournament. He's excellent, and I don't mean it in a snide way to Forest. I like Forest. I like what Forest represent. But Harvey Elliott will be looking to play in the Champions League.
Okay, Dave, the Forest fan, is on the line. Dave, what do you make of the Morgan Gibbs-White news?
I'm really disappointed, if I'm honest with you. I think he's jumped ship to a much smaller club like Spurs. I mean, they're nothing. They've won nothing this year. They have.
But they have just won the Europa League, mate. You can't say they've not won anything. I mean, I share your frustration, but they have won the Europa League and they're playing Champions League football next season.
That, though. Don't let the facts get in the way. just get annoyed.
I'm a Leicester fan, and the reason they've lost it is because Buonanotte knocked one into the City ground, and they've won nothing.
Hey, look.
I like what you did there.
Fair play to the Leicester fan.
That's 1-0. That's 1-0 Leicester.
Nah, it's not 1-0. Leicester are going to start next season with a points deduction, and so look, I'm sure they're taking glee in Forest loss in Morgan Gibbs-White.
They're kicking you when you're down. You're in here. You're crying about Gibbs-White. Now you've got Leicester fans.
A Leicester fan cannot kick me down. In fact, that's made me feel better because it's reminded me that Nottingham Forest are by far the best team in the East Midlands, and Leicester are going to be nowhere near it because they've signed Cifuentes when they've got some other better managers that they could have signed. behind. They're going to get a points deduction and they're going to struggle to stay in the Championship. But fair play, you've got to accept it. That was good from Dave, the Forest fan turned Leicester fan. Absolutely mad. Right, fair play. You're listening to the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT with Ladbrokes. 18 plus begambleaware.org. Good evening. You are listening to the Transfer Insiders with me, Max Scott, alongside the one and only Rory Jennings. Delighted to say now to give us a little bit more information about what is trending, what are the big stories on the website at talksport.com. We got our very own Jackson Cole. How are you, mate?
Yeah, good. Thank you, Max.
Good. Well, I must say, I've been absolutely done over by a Leicester fan. Fair play to him. He disguised himself as Dave the Forest fan. He started sharing my pain.
Started talking about Buonanotte.
And then absolutely sent me on Buonanotte's goal.
Yeah, 1-0 Leicester. Love it.
You've got to, if you're a Leicester fan, you've got to take your wins. And if it's about Forest, fair play. I'm presuming that this is something that's they've got a lot of traction online, Jackson.
Yeah, a little bit. But the first transfer story I want to bring you actually is to do with your club. Nottingham Forest. Yep. We've heard about the Morgan Gibbs-White. He's going to go to Tottenham. It looks like the medical's happening tomorrow, and Nottingham Forest are looking to find a replacement, and that could be in the form of James McAtee, the Manchester City youngster. The Daily Telegraph, they're reporting that Forest have contacted City over a potential deal. West Ham were also interested in McAtee, and obviously I'd be quite happy to see that move happen because all these young English players, he was part of that under-21 squad that won the Euros. Captain as well, got a goal against Spain, I remember. but he's never going to really get that many opportunities at Manchester City. He did have a couple of good games in the FA Cup earlier this season, but if he can just sort of move to a slightly smaller club with all due respect to Nottingham Forest, yeah, I think that'd be a good move for him.
Not necessarily smaller, but I do take your point.
Yeah, I think in terms of revenue at the minute, we're certainly a smaller club.
Recent success.
In terms of rich European history, it belongs, it belongs to the Mighty Forest. Now, look,
see what he's had to do there? He's had to get that in because he's still upset about that Leicester fan scoring at the Trent end.
So, look, James McAtee, I think there's a willingness from Manchester City, clearly, to give him game time. I think it's a similar situation to Cole Palmer, and fair play on City, not like Rory's Chelsea over here hoarding talent and not letting him leave. I think it would be a great shout. He would fit into Morgan Gibbs-White's position really well. I think he's clearly developed as a player and as a leader, captain in England under-21s. I think it'd be incredibly exciting for Forest, and I think ease some of the pain that we're feeling and some of the concern about what we're going to look like next season, because there is, without a shadow of a doubt, James McAtee has that in him. He's got that sort of little magician in him. He's not where Morgan Gibbs-White is at the minute, but with game time, I certainly think he can get there.
Absolutely. The next one.
What else you got?
Yeah, the next one is again Nottingham Forest related. They've renewed their interest in Johan Visser because they tried to sign him back in January, but 25 million bid wasn't enough. The Athletic are reporting that Forest have put in another bid, but that was instantly rebuffed by Brentford.
What frustrates me about this, by the way, is that Forest are just lowballing Brentford, and I just think when you've lost two absolutely integral players, don't frustrate the club that you want. That we've wanted him for a long, long time. He's been on our books, and understandably so. What a player! But I just think, of course, you don't want to overdo it and then them try and charge you more than he's worth. But I just don't want us to lose out on a player that we've been going after for ages. Rory, what a player, by the way.
Yeah, Visser would certainly help ease the upset, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
It would certainly help ease the upset of losing Elanga. In fact, on some level, I think you could say that it would elevate the Nottingham Forest options from Elanga to Johan Visser. I think he's a very good player.
Yeah,
proven record in the Premier League. I think it would be an excellent signing. The thing that I can't quite understand here, though, why don't you just go and sign him? Like, go spend the money. You've earned a lot of money.
That's what I'm saying.
You've sold a lot of, a lot of talent. Use that money. Go and get your player, and immediately get Nottingham Forest fans' heart beating a little bit fast.
Yeah, it's not entirely clear how much Forest bid this time, but it said that Brentford value him at over £50 million, which I think is a bit. I can see why they've done it, because they're losing Brian Mbeumo, so Visser is their main outlet of goals as things stand. But he's not a £50 million player.
We're almost becoming victims of our own valuation of Anthony Elanga. That £55 to £65 million valuation is all over the market. Brian Mbeumo, Mateus Cunha, Anthony Elanga, Noni Madueke, they're all being priced up at this value. And Johan Visser's a fantastic player, and I think Brentford are playing the games and saying, well, this is what they're worth. We think he's as good, if not better than them players. Whether that's true or not, you can decide. But I think Forest are going to be falling victim to the valuation of the market at the minute. So, but I will be incredibly excited to see him. Let's stop talking about Forest before I weep and break down. What have you got in terms of Arsenal? Because they've been hitting the headlines recently with Gyökeres. Any other business on the cards?
Well, they are preparing a formal approach to Crystal Palace for Eberechi Eze.
Exciting.
Also understands that Arsenal have been in talks with Eze and his camp, and they've been very positive. Unsurprisingly, it seems like he's pretty open to the idea of going. There is a £68 million release clause there, so I think.
Well, this is the one. This is what we should be talking about. This should be the focus. This is exactly what Arsenal need. Eberechi Eze is a diamond. He is a glorious footballer, and I would say that Eberechi Eze in full flow is one of the most pleasing sights. He is just like mesmerising. And what he would do to that Arsenal team, the way that he would elevate the options, the goals that he would score, the competition that he would bring, I tell you what, it's not a guarantee. There's a world where we could have some very uncomfortable conversations about Martin Odegaard if Eberechi Eze was an Arsenal player. The elevation you would see in Saka.
Do you not think you can play? You can play them.
You can potentially, but if Odegaard demonstrated the form that he demonstrated last year, he wouldn't be in the team. Last year, he would be in the team because there's nobody to replace him. This year, if they were to get Eberechi Eze, if Martin Odegaard starts putting in those underwhelming performances, all of a sudden he's not in the team anymore, and that would be exactly what you need, because suddenly Odegaard has to raise his level, and he probably would. He's a good player.
Yeah.
So I think that Eberechi Eze, you look at what he did for Palace last year, you look at what he's done for England, I just don't see how Arsenal don't fully focus on this, because this would be a needle mover for Arsenal.
Yeah, I think a few years ago they were very interested in Wilfried Zaha, but they didn't want to cough up the £80 million, spent it on Nicolas Pepe instead, so they don't want lightning to strike twice.
No, that one didn't work out, but I think it's fair to say that, Arsenal are never really associated, like you've just used the example there, of sort of being cutthroat. We've seen Spurs demonstrate that in this transfer window, as much as it hurts with Kyrgios and Morgan Gibbs-White. But I think that Arsenal are looking at the market. They're looking at what Liverpool have done with their signings. You look at Manchester City spending multi-millions this year in January and the summer window. And I think Arsenal are saying, if we want to keep up and put in sort of a run for the title, we need to be clinical and we need to be able to pay, whether it's over the odds or not, for players like Eze. I mean, that would put them surely as title contenders, as in right up there with Liverpool, Rory. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, I think that is exactly the signing that they could make in order to have a chance of winning the league. As things stand, Arsenal won't win the league. I've tipped Arsenal to win the league the last 2 years in a row, by the way. As things stand, they won't win the league. The way that they can win it is by going out and making a marquee signing. Eberechi Eze is about as perfect as you can get. Premier League proven, ready to shine, guided Crystal Palace to silverware, scored a goal in the final, done the business for England. Like, this is the perfect signing. And he's so much better than Trossard, so much better than Martinelli. I would argue better than Martin Odegaard. And suddenly then Martin Odegaard needs to get better to keep his place in the team, or Arsenal get better because they bring in somebody who's better than him. Imagine Saka and Eze linking up together.
I know. And for me, 68 million, whatever, is that the release clause?
Yeah, that is a release clause.
It's a bargain.
So, yes,
I think
that's this market.
If Noni Madueke is on his way to Arsenal for just a little bit less, for me, forget that. Like we said earlier, use Madueke maybe to leverage that deal.
Sell Madueke with Chelsea, from our perspective, sell Madueke and go and buy Eze for that.
Well, exactly. And I mean, that would put you right up there as well. Jackson, absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for coming in and giving us an update. That is Jackson Cole, talkSPORT's very own, giving us all the latest from what is trending in the transfer stories on talksport.com. Right, it is half time in the games in Group A in the Women's Euros. Ian Abrams has been watching. What's the latest you can tell us?
Half time, it's Switzerland 0, Finland 0, a result that would take Switzerland through to the quarterfinals for the first time in their history. They need a win or a draw. They had 2 or 3 really good early chances. Risson probably with the best of a scissor kick, 5 yards out. She just didn't make the right contact. But Finland came back into the game with 2 glorious efforts. Firstly, an unmarked header from Slovenia, saved by Chelsea goalkeeper Peng, who then made the better save, diving low to her right-hand side to save it on the line by the post after a free kick had come in and hit the West Ham defender Nystrom. She knew little about it, but it would have been a priceless goal. It was saved by Peng, so at the break, it's Switzerland 0, Finland 0.
Angelina Kelly's watching the other game in Group A. What's the latest, Ange?
It's half-time, Norway 2, Iceland 1. Iceland got off to the perfect start as they play for pride with a goal in the 6th minute from the girlfriend of ex-Arsenal defender Rob Holding's Smindis Jonsdottir. Norway goalkeeper Cecilia Fiskerstrand got 2 hands to the ball. It came back out to Jonsdottir, who powered it into the back of the net. However, since then, it's been all Norway as they got their equaliser in the 15th minute from 20-year-old Signe Gorpset, who volleyed the ball into the bottom right corner, thanks to a great corner from Vilde Borisa, who then provided Gorpset with another assist for the second goal, as Gorpset this time fired the ball into the bottom left corner, making her first start at a major tournament a very memorable one, as Norway are very much in control. Half-time, Norway 2, Iceland 1.
Angelina, great stuff, but while we've got you here, I've got to ask you, there's been some history in women's football today. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so Olivia Smith, Liverpool player, she joined the club for a club record fee believed to be just over £200,000 in July 2024. She had a really good first season. She scored just under a third of Liverpool's league goals, but it was an underwhelming season for Liverpool. They came 7th, which in comparison to coming 4th the season before, shows they really do need to improve and get some players in. And according to sources, the fee that Arsenal are going to pay for Smith will mean that Liverpool receive 5 times what they paid for her 12 months ago. So in the long run, this could be the right call, because she's set to become the world's first women's player to break the £1 million transfer barrier. Now, going over to Arsenal, she normally plays on the right wing. She can play as a centre forward as well. You question what this means for someone like Beth Mead, especially with Arsenal having signed Chloe Kelly, who tends to play on the right as well. But you look at Arsenal's roster, how are they going to play all these players? Now, the thing is, as much as they won the Champions League, they didn't compete in the WSL. They finished 12 points behind Chelsea, who were unbeaten. And that's because they they had a poor start. In the WSL, it's really competitive. 1 or 2 losses can cost you a season. And a lot of Arsenal fans want to see them competing with the likes of Chelsea, getting these big signings. And that's exactly what they're doing, getting Olivia Smith. So a really, really exciting signing for Arsenal.
UEFA Women's Euro 2025 update on talkSPORT with McDonald's. When the big match means Big McDonald's hunger, try the new and iconic Big Arch. Available from 11 a.m. at participating restaurants.
Right, Edgar Berlanga and Hamza Shiraz headline a stacked card from New York with Shakur Stevenson defending his WBC lightweight title against William Zepeda this Sunday, live only on DAZN. You can buy that now at DAZN.com/boxing.
Boxing update on talkSPORT with DAZN, the global home of boxing. Buy now at DAZN.com/boxing.
You're listening to the Transfer Insiders with me, Max Scott, alongside Rory Jennings. We're going to keep you across all the very latest transfer news, breaking transfer news next with our chief football correspondent, Alex Crook.
John Textor believes Crystal Palace should be allowed to compete in the Europa League next season, saying that he doesn't infringe on UEFA's multi-club ownership rules.
We shouldn't talk about whether or not I have 43% vote or whether I have a 25% vote. We should talk about zero.
Yeah.
Because the document that I signed, when I signed onto the shares, says clearly I'm not entitled to have any role in management decisions.
Palace's situation in Europe is still up in the air after Lyon's appeal against relegation in France was successful. Textor was also asked about his relationship with Chairman Steve Parish.
His ambition every year is to avoid relegation. Our ambition is to climb the table. Who thought we could go from bankruptcy to winning South America in 2.5 years down there? I mean, that was crazy.
We're expected to find out by the end of the week whether Palace will be allowed to compete in the Europa League. Transfers and Tottenham are confident of completing a move for Nottingham Forest midfielder Morgan Gibbs-White by triggering his £60 million release clause. This after the signing of Mohamed Kudus is all but done. But why did West Ham sell?
I couldn't get my head around it because He's definitely one of your best players, right? One of your most creative players, and that's one thing I think that they lack. West Ham is a little bit of creativity. It almost feels like if Jared Bowen doesn't get it done, then who is going to get it done? And the fact that he's going again, we spoke about Paquetá and his situation.
Yeah.
They've got Somerville, who I really like, was good at Leeds. It's a bizarre one.
Arsenal have confirmed the signing of Christian Norgard from Brentford and are to formally approach Palace over Eberechi Eze. And there's optimism that Blair Kinghorn may be fit in time for the Lions' opening test against Australia next weekend. He hobbled off during yesterday's warm-up against the Brumbies. Owen Farrell, meanwhile, has been named on the bench for the final warm-up game against a combined Australia-New Zealand 15 on Saturday in what is now his fourth tour.
You know, he's I suppose lucky enough to play when he was very young, and you know you need the stars to align. I would have thought, as far as that concerned, when your first one starts, I suppose it allows you to have a look at that type of thing.
Hear the whole Lions tour live on talkSPORT this summer.
Good evening, how are we? This is the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT. talkSPORT's chief football correspondent Alex Crook will join me and Rory to give us all the latest on Morgan Gibbs-White. More misery for Brentford. Could Johan Visser be on the move as well? Let's get into it. This is the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT. Okay, usually I'm delighted to hear from Crookie, our very own man, on the front line of all the transfer news and rumours. But I know, Crookie, you're going to be breaking my heart, mate. I mean, this Morgan Gibbs-White stuff, this has moved so quickly, hasn't it?
Yeah, it really has. I've just been speaking to someone at another Premier League club, actually, and his message to me was Forest are being ransacked. And it does feel like that, doesn't it, when you take into account Anthony Elanga and the fact he is off to Newcastle in a £55 million deal plus add-ons. And now Morgan Gibbs-White, as you say, two of the talismen of last season, out of the door of the City ground. I've got to say, this Tottenham story has developed at rapid pace. We found out, about 5 o'clock this afternoon?
Crookie, I was asleep.
From Spurs.
So I was working on the breakfast show this morning, then coming in later to do the show this evening. I went home, had a nap, peaceful, the world is good. Marinakis is going to back the club. We're going to win the Conference League. And I wake up to text from our producers here, peppering me about this move. It is literally Forest fans' worst nightmare.
It is, and especially when you factor in the release clause, so they're powerless to stop him going. He signed a new contract, or he signed a contract there back in 2022. £60 million, we now know, is the magic number. Tottenham have told Forest they plan to trigger that release clause. He'll undergo a medical tomorrow, personal terms already agreed, as is the way with the modern transfer. Clubs don't even approach each other unless they've got a pretty big indication the player is keen on the move. And I've got to say, as depressed and demoralised as Forest fans are, Tottenham fans are cock-a-hoop these last 24 hours because they've agreed a fee for Mohamed Kudus. That deal is pretty much done. And now it looks like Morgan Gibbs-White on his way there now as well.
It's truly amazing the way that Tottenham have really got their act together, isn't it? Since they won that trophy in Bilbao, it feels like they've just been revolutionised, like totally reimagined. Yeah, they've got it right. How do you see this going, Crookie, for Nottingham Forest? You mentioned there that they've been ransacked. They've got to compensate, haven't they? How do they right the wrong of losing their key talent? Who are they going to bring in?
Well, they're big players to replace. I know they're very excited down at the City ground about Igor Jesus, the player they've signed from Botafogo, the Brazilian striker, Cunha, a defender coming from the same club. And we know that talks are ongoing between them and Brentford for Johan Visser, who, of course, was amongst their list of targets in January. And my understanding is that Visser is quite keen now to get away from Brentford, but I don't think they're going to have a clear run. We know that Tottenham are interested, and I've been told not to discount Newcastle United as well. But I think if they could get Visser, I guess that would partly compensate for losing these two big players. But it's just the way of the world, isn't it? If you're a smaller club, and I'm not disrespecting your beloved Forest there, Max, but you punch above your weight, as they clearly did last season. bigger clubs take note. It's happened to Bournemouth. It's happening in Brentford as well. I do think it adds an interesting dynamic to the relegation battle, because obviously we've been bemoaning the fact that teams coming up from the Championship haven't really been competitive in the last couple of seasons. Sunderland are spending big money. They've got Simon Adingra in from Brighton today for £21 million plus add-ons. Leeds are having a go in the transfer market as well. Burnley obviously signing Kyle Walker for a bit of Premier League experience. I think if you're looking at clubs who are vulnerable, I don't want to depress you, Max, but I think you have to put Forest in that mix potentially.
So you're saying Forest are now in the relegation fight?
I thought at the end of last season, when they missed out on the Champions League on the last day, it would be a really tall order to replicate next season what they did in the season just gone.
Yeah, no, I
think you saw it in the second half of the season. You saw it in that FA Cup semi-final when they didn't really lay a glove on Manchester City. I think in the second half of the season, clubs worked out how to play Forest.
No, I agree with that. But what I would say is I think it's a stretch to say we could be in the relegation fight. But I mean, you've said there about the club being ransacked. Is there any danger of Murillo, Milenkovic? I mean, they must have their admirers, whether it's elsewhere in the Premier League or in Europe. Is there concern that this could snowball?
Well, they've tied down Ola Aina and Nico Williams to new contracts. So those two are there for the long haul, which is good news. But it wouldn't surprise me if bigger clubs looking at those two central defenders, because I think when you pick your team of last season, a lot of people had one, if not both, Forest defenders very much part of the conversation. So I can understand your concerns. I've not heard of any definitive interest in them at this moment in time. But then the Gibbs-White to Tottenham sort of came out of the blue earlier. So never say never.
Crookie, can I get your thoughts on this Noni Madueke deal from Chelsea to Arsenal? Max and I have been debating it. It seems to have split Arsenal fans. Some seem to think that it's a good move. It will add to their squad depth. Others seem to see it as fairly uninspiring and totally underwhelming when compared to the likes of Rodrigo and players of his quality. What do you think with regard to this one? Can you see it actually happening?
I can certainly see it happening because, again, the player, I think, is keen to make the move. And when clubs start talking about fees in the region of £50 million, you have to take it seriously. I think from a Chelsea perspective, and again, I think it will split Chelsea fans, this is what the model is all about, isn't it? They signed him for, what, £29 million, Madueke? Mm-hmm. They're going to sell him for 50. So, a decent profit on the books, and therefore it will help in terms of PSR, and that is their business model now, to sign young players and eventually sell them on for profit. It's not what we've been used to from Chelsea, but it is the new order of things. From an Arsenal perspective, if I had £50 million and I was in charge of Arsenal, I'm not sure that Noni Madueke would be top of the list, not because he's a bad player. I think he's a very good player, and I think he backs himself, and he will back himself to do well at Arsenal. I just think they can spend the money elsewhere. They've already got Bukayo Saka on that right-hand side. He played more games for Chelsea on the right, Madueke, a lot more games actually than he did on the left last season. And when Saka's fit, he's not going to get past him, is he?
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Crookie, there. And I think if there's that release clause in Eberechi Eze's sort of contract, it would be the wisest move for Arsenal to do that. But I want to quickly talk about Bournemouth, because they're another club like Forest that did incredibly well last season. There's been lots of talk about some of their best players leaving, but there's some news regarding bringing in someone else.
Yeah, a goalkeeper is, I think, top of their priority list. They had Kepa Arrizabalaga last year, but obviously decided not to take up the option of signing permanently. He's at Arsenal now as backup to David Raya. Neto is coming back from Arsenal, but I don't think they see him as number one. And there could be a bit of a domino effect when it comes to goalkeepers, as I was reporting earlier today. A player that Rory will know at Chelsea, Georgi Petrovic, very much Bournemouth's top target, and it does feel like a deal is getting closer. Sunderland were in the race. They're not in the race anymore. Once Petrovic comes in and they're looking for £25 million, Chelsea, to sell him, that will enable Mark Travers, who's currently a goalkeeper at Bournemouth, to go and be number two to Jordan Pickford at Everton. What does Sunderland do? Well, I wouldn't totally rule out Anthony Patterson being given a crack at the number one jersey. In some ways, I think he deserves it because he's been a good servant for them, made some key saves in the playoff final. But they are casting their net. As I mentioned, they were interested in Petrovic. Aaron Ramsdale is one that's been mentioned to me, but I don't think that is going to happen at this moment in time. And also Sam Johnson at Wolves is someone the goalkeeper coach knows very well, so that's one to keep an eye on.
Crookie, you might have been the bearer of bad news and you might have put Forest in the relegation fight next season, but it's an absolute pleasure to have you on. Thanks so much, mate.
No worries. I'm sure your fans will remind me of that in a year's time if you finish Sixth again.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Check your replies on your Twitter account, mate. That's Alex Crook, our chief football correspondent, as ever, bringing us all the very latest transfer news. Right, the latest episode of Wimbledon Unfiltered with Nick Kyrgios. He's been an absolute great addition to the talkSPORT lineup. That is now available on the talkSPORT YouTube channel. Nick and Gordon Smart were joined by former Chelsea captain John Terry. How about that, Rory? What a guest. And he revealed a special agreement he had in place after he departed Stamford Bridge.
Like, I'd never wanted to leave Chelsea. And when I did, it was that last year of Conte come in, took over, we won the league. I kind of got injured, which was a blessing for the team. I was at the kind of the back end of my career, and I kind of got injured. It took me a little bit longer to recover. And when I was out of the team, we went on like a winning streak of like 10 games, and I was like, I'm not getting back in this. But for me, it was like I was out of it, and I knew at that point I had nothing more to give for Chelsea, and I never wanted to be there and just kind of stay there because I'd kind of earned that as a player. I knew that my levels after that were kind of going one way. So for me, it was time to go. They offered me another contract, but I decided to go to Aston Villa because we was in the Championship, and I had an agreement with Villa that if we got promoted that year and we lost in the final to Fulham, that I wouldn't play against Chelsea the following year in the Premier League. So 2 games I would have missed would have been Chelsea. It just wouldn't have felt right to me. But ideally I wanted to stay at Chelsea forever, but I felt like I had one more year in me, and we give it a good go at Villa, but unfortunately it didn't.
Belter of a guest there for Nick Kyrgios. For your daily roundup of each day of Wimbledon, tune into Wimbledon Unfiltered with Nick Kyrgios, Gordon Smart, and like you've just seen there, some very special guests available each weeknight from 9:30 p.m. on YouTube and CTV. You're listening to the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT with Ladbrokes, 18+, be gambleaware.org. evening. This is the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT with me, Max Scott. The man across from me is Rory Jennings. We've been reacting to some of the biggest transfer news, including Morgan Gibbs-White on his way to Spurs, Noni Madueke to Arsenal, and a heated debate about Kai Havertz. Rory doesn't think he's been a success at Arsenal. I certainly think he does. We've got more to come, but let's first get the latest from the Women's Euros Group A action. Ian Abrahams.
29 minutes left. It's Switzerland 0, Finland 0. Remember, draw good enough for Switzerland. Finland have to win to go through to the quarterfinals, and it's just beginning to get a little bit nervy in Geneva, with the Swiss fans recognising that just one lucky effort from Finland, if it goes in, could knock them out. Finland have had most of the play in the second half, but really haven't forced Peng into a meaningful save in this period. It's Switzerland 0, Finland 0, 62 on the clock.
There's another game in Group A, and Angelina Kelly has the latest.
It's Norway 3, Iceland 1, and it's a goal for Arsenal's Frida Maanum in the 46th minute. There's some great build-up play between Maanum and Singi Gorpset, as Maanum on the edge of the D plays it out to Gorpset on the right, just inside the box. She squares it back to Maanum, who's waiting to the right of the penalty spot, and drives it into the bottom right corner of the net. Iceland's goal scorer, Svandís Jónsdóttir, has tried to get her team back into the game with a shot that went over the bar, but her team's chances are limited so far in this second half. Norway 3, Iceland 1.
UEFA Women's Euro 2025 update on talkSPORT with McDonald's. Got Big McDonald's hunger? The new Big Arch is here. Available from 11 a.m. at participating restaurants.
And now it's time for a little bit of this.
Quick fire! Flames or freezing?
Yeah, this is Flames or Freezing, where Rory and I take a look at some of the day's hottest transfer stories and decide if we're going to put some cold water on them or not. So, Rory, first, straight off the bat, would it be Flames or Freezing for Newcastle after they signed Anthony Elanga from Nottingham Forest for £55 million?
I think it's a good signing. I don't think it's necessarily the needle mover. I don't think it's necessarily going to elevate Newcastle United to anything more than they were last year. It's a slight improvement, perhaps. But I think lukewarm exists. I was about to say I don't think we have.
I don't like the fact that you letting him sit on the fence here.
I'm not sitting on the fence. I'm decisively saying that I don't think it's a signing that Newcastle needed. When you think about the players that Newcastle have been linked with, like at one point I thought they were going to sign Mark Gahey. Like Mark Gahey is the best English centre half. He's the best player that plays centre half for England. Like England's best.
Yeah,
that's the kind of player that Newcastle should be signing. England's best. Whatever you think of this signing, like whatever you think of what Elanga will take to St James's Park, it's good. It's something, but I expected a little bit more. But it could still come for Newcastle.
Yeah, look, as a Forest fan at the minute, I don't feel like sort of celebrating some of our best players that are on the way out. So I'll leave it at that. But I mean, look, I think he's going to find it difficult to break into that Eddie Howe's first team squad, because Anthony Gordon on one side, but also Rory, it's clear Eddie Howe loves Jacob Murphy, and Jacob Murphy loves Eddie Howe and the football club. Do you see Anthony Elanga stepping straight into the starting 11 off the bat?
Yeah, I think he's good enough. I think he's good enough to start, and I think Eddie Howe's done a remarkable job there. If you look at the team that he's assembled, it's almost as if he signed players that are very good players, but also good people that will buy into the project, people that will buy in to his identity. You know, they're such an intense team. He's such an intense manager. So Elanga, this is a great move for him. It's a great platform for him to be given. You know, so it's going to be interesting to see how it all works out. But yeah, I think it will succeed.
Okay, moving on. My team, would it be Flames or Freezing for Nottingham Forest to sign Belgian winger Johan Bakayoko from PSV?
I mean, you need something like this, don't you? Although we have had a Forest fan on the show today who called up, obviously, and just said that he wasn't particularly optimistic about getting this one over the line. What I think Forest need, and I make this case about basically every team, but I certainly think it's applicable to Nottingham Forest, I think you need Premier League proven players. I think you need players that are ready to do it in the Premier League without any jeopardy, without any settling in period. You're losing good Premier League proven footballers. You need to replace them in kind, and it's not easy to do that. But if you were to sign maybe a James McAtee, I mean, you've mentioned Harvey Elliott. I feel like that one's a little bit beyond you. But if you were to sign a player like Harvey Elliott, I think that would be sensational. Look, Bakayoko could work. It could be a good signing. Might. But the element of jeopardy
for a Rory Jennings, for Chelsea Rory, this is on the fence. What is it, Johan Bakayoko? You having it or you not?
No, then no, I don't. I don't think so. Freezing.
Okay, it's freezing from Rory Jennings. I mean, I do like the Johan Visser links. I do like the McAtee links. I mean, there aren't any Harvey Elliott links, but I like the look of that as well. So we will see what happens with my beloved Nottingham Forest. Right, next up, would it be flames or freezing, Rory, for Bournemouth to sign Petrovic, the keeper from Chelsea?
Yeah, it's good signing. Good signing. I'd argue a better keeper than Kepa Arrizabalaga. I think it's a very good signing. I like Petrovic. I think Petrovic is the best keeper on Chelsea's books.
Flames.
So yeah, this is a good signing.
Do you think Bournemouth will be disappointed that they couldn't get Kepa sort of in permanently? Because he looked like a different player.
I think Kepa Arrizabalaga is such an average goalkeeper. I really do. And I think that maybe he got away with it at Bournemouth because they go slightly under the radar. So when he has a howler, it's not necessarily highlighted the way that it was when he was playing for Chelsea or potentially will be playing for Arsenal.
So he didn't play himself, back into your heart as a Chelsea fan?
No.
So you prefer Robert Sanchez? You'd rather keep him and the season he's out?
No. I wouldn't prefer Robert Sanchez either, although I would prefer Robert Sanchez to Kepa Arrizabalaga. I just think that we need to elevate our goalkeeping situation as well.
Okay, would it be flames or freezing for Arsenal to get Eberechi Eze from Crystal Palace, Rory?
I mean, this would be the best signing that they could possibly make. This is flames on fire. This is
flames.
This is it, isn't it? This is as hot as it gets. This is Icarus. This is the signing that they need. If Arsenal sign Eberechi Eze, suddenly we're talking about Arsenal potentially winning the league. I feel like, when we talk about what moves the needle for Arsenal, everybody focuses on the striker. Will it be Gyökeres? Yeah, absolutely. They need that striker. They need Gyökeres to work. But I think Eberechi Eze is that as well. And there's almost something better about Eze because he's magic. He's unpredictable. And they need a little bit of that. Last year, when you think about what really, really hampered Arsenal were excellent against Man City. They were unbeaten against Man City, unbeaten against Liverpool. That's not where they struggled. They struggled against teams that sat back against them.
Yeah.
They became incredibly predictable. It got to the stage where they were launching the ball into the box, hoping for the best, trying to win throw-ins to launch it into the box, trying to win set pieces to hope for the best off the back of that. Eberechi Eze it's craft, it's guile, it's silk. That's the player that they need.
I think he's part of that sort of class of player that in the current state of the game that's so obsessed with systems and so obsessed with sort of quadrants and tiki-taka football, he's a part of that class of player, a little bit like Morgan Gibbs-White, like Cole Palmer, that trump that mould and can do anything. I remember at the start of the season, Arsenal had the same amount of draws, I think it was 5 draws at the time, by October than they did the entirety of last season. And someone like Eberechi Eze, like you say, he can move the needle, he can unlock that. Here's a question for you, Rory. Liverpool rightly are being lauded for securing Florian Wirtz, British record transfer fee. Now, I rely on people like Kevin Hatchard as a European expert. I'm not going to lie to our listeners and say that I watch Bundesliga every week, but there's no doubt he's an absolutely wonderful player. But if Arsenal could get Eberechi Eze in, do you think that's a better signing than Florian Wirtz?
Probably not, no, because of the track record of Wirtz. Like, Wirtz has been doing it at the top for 5 years. Like, Wirtz has been doing it for Germany for 5. He's been scoring goals at the very top. So probably not. I mean this with all due respect to what Eberechi Eze has done in his career so far, but it's nothing comparable to that. Depriving Bayern Munich of a league title, for example, there's nothing comparable to that. But I think it changes Arsenal. I think it rivals the signing of Florian Wirtz. I think Eberechi Eze is everything that you want from a footballer. When you fall in love with football, the reason that you fall in love with football is because of the artistry. It's because of the unpredictable footballers. Everybody's favourite footballer, nobody's favourite footballer, unless you're a moron, is a good system player. Nobody loves a good system player. Nobody dreams of becoming a good system player. Everybody dreams of becoming Cole Palmer. Everybody dreams of becoming Eberechi Eze. Everybody dreams of becoming Dennis Wise. That is certainly what I dreamed of. That is what football is about. Well, and I think Eberechi Eze is that. He's the closest thing, him alongside Cole Palmer, to those 1970s throwback maverick footballers. That's what Eberechi is. And imagine him running down a wing at Arsenal with Bukayo Saka on the other side.
Couldn't agree more. Right, I need a quick flames or freezing from you on our final one. Flames or freezing for Leeds United signed Sean Longstaff from Newcastle.
Good signing for Leeds. Yeah, absolutely. Very good signing for Leeds.
Flames.
This isn't going to sit comfortably with a lot of Chelsea fans. Any Chelsea fan listening to this won't like the words that this Chelsea fan is about to say. But I want Leeds United to survive. I don't want them to do well. I certainly don't want them to win silverware. I certainly don't want them to succeed in the way that they once did as a proud club. but I certainly want them in the Premier League.
Yeah.
And I would love them to make the right signings, bring in some players with Premier League proven qualities that can just about keep them in the league.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Well said. I think it's about time that one of the 3 promoted clubs stayed up and we see some change up there in the Premier League. Otherwise, it risks just becoming a closed shop. You are listening to the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT. Me, Max Scott, alongside Rory Jennings. Next up, we're going to give more reaction to some of the breaking transfer news coming out of the Premier League today.
Hello guys and welcome to Wimbledon Unfiltered with me, Nick Kyrgios, presented by talkSPORT and Good Trouble. Today joining me again is my good friend Gordon Smart. How are you, mate?
World class, Nick Kyrgios. We're on day number 8, I think it is.
8 only?
Is it? Yeah, 2 to go. 2 to go.
9.
I can't count. Yeah, we're on day 9. So we've not got long to go until the weekend, but it's interesting to feel how the mood changes around Wimbledon heading into this weekend. You've been there. You know what it smells like in the Sistine Chapel, right?
Yep.
How different is that for a player as things settle down?
Yeah, you definitely know when the business end of the tournament's coming. You know, you start with 128 players, and then you know the cafeteria's a little bit quiet, the change room's quiet, then you only see 3 other people there in the semi-finals, and it's like, okay, that's when the pressure really starts. You know, especially for me when I was in the final, just seeing me and Novak left, I was like, wow, this is, every single decision I've ever made in my life, gym session, night out, training session, good meal I've chosen was all for that moment. So the pressure is immense.
How difficult is it to preserve energy towards the end of the tournament?
Yeah, it's hard. You're pretty much full-time, your anxiety's up, the pressure, the media is one thing, especially some of these older players, this older generation doesn't understand, like, you can't really run away from it. Away from the tennis courts, you're on your phone, Instagram, Twitter, X, all these, social media outlets are showing you, what could be, and or like if you win, what the prize is, and if you lose, the expectations, and it's hard because you can't run away from it, and that's where I struggled a lot, really, because it was. Yeah, that's all I could think about. I couldn't get away from it.
It's interesting. You're 30 years old, so your entire career has had social media.
Yeah.
Probably from MySpace onwards.
Yeah,
right?
literally, yeah.
Yeah, so do you ever wonder what it would have been like to play in the Sampras era, where all you had to worry about was terrestrial TV interview, play your tennis, have your chicken and beans, go to bed?
Yeah, well, look, if I'm having nights like I am now with social media, I could only imagine what nights I would have had without social media.
Yeah.
And the anxiety of, someone recording me or something. Yeah. But I wish I played in that era, honestly. Because I feel like, now even when the draw comes out, I don't really personally like to know who I'm playing or that section of the draw. I just like to go out there and play. But now it's like, you open up my phone, it's like, oh, you're playing this person. If you win, you're playing this person. This is your seed. And it's like, Novak's in your draw. I'm just like, I can't run away from it. And I don't, it's not really enjoyable.
There's only really one story today, and she's part of your
been playing great. She was really, I wouldn't say lucky to get through Siegman, the 37-year-old veteran, but in saying that, I don't think Sabalenka was near her best tennis this week at all. So, Anna Samova is someone that, she was, pretty much since she came on the scene, she's been expected to win Grand Slams. She's only 23 years old. And she already took some time away from the sport dealing with her mental health. So to see her finally back on track, she was ranked 400, I think, almost a year ago, and now back in the top 10 Grand Slam finals. So she always had the ability, and to see that she's actually put that and made a Grand Slam final is good. But again, Sabalenka is, you should be, feeling pretty average about her performance. But again, another Wimbledon semi-final to add to the resume is not, too bad. I think ultimately she should be super proud with herself, but this one's going to hurt her a bit because I think she probably won't have a better chance to win Wimbledon.
How much of tennis is managing disappointment, Nick? Because there's a lot of losing, right?
Well, I mean, for me personally, I think I was pretty good with that throughout my career, to be honest, because you're losing pretty much every week. Unless you're one of these top guys or top female players, you're losing every single week, and there's another tournament, in a week's time. So there's so much tennis to be played. You can't be discouraged by 1 week. And to be fair, you're only going to be remembered by the Grand Slams at the end of the day. So I understand if Sabalenka maybe wants like a month off and just get ready for US Open.
How much of a difference does it make having the brackets and the number after your name, right? If you're seeded for a tournament, does it add a pressure, or for the top players, doesn't matter, it's academic?
Well, I mean, you are protected. You're protected until the third or fourth round. So it's good to be seeded. It means you're playing consistent tennis. I mean, I made the Wimbledon final unseeded. So, I mean, I was one of those players in my career where it didn't really matter whether I was seeded or not. But, Sabalenka's going to, go from this tournament with some, another semi-final, another, few $100,000 in the pocket. Like, it's something to build off. And also, I mean, she's, as I said, I think if she gets through today, she probably wins the whole thing. So it is hard.
You told me a brilliant story about managing disappointment, and I hope you can share it. Would you tell us what you did when you lost out in a big game was it Djokovic you lost
No, it was to Nadal.
Nadal, sorry.
He beat me in the final of Beijing, and he destroyed me. Like, I was having a really good week.
Yeah.
Finals of Beijing, pretty big tournament. I get destroyed by Nadal. I'm having a couple of wines that night, having a couple of drinks with my boys. And then, I was like, you know what? This guy just destroyed me. He probably earned like, over $1 million that week. So I was like, oh, you know what? I'm going to put all of my room service. I was actually in the hotel restaurant. I just put it on Nadal's room, and I just signed it as Nadal. And the waitress had no idea. So to this day, I'm sorry, Rafa, if you got this outstanding couple grand bill from me that was, I'm sorry. Actually, I'm not sorry at all. You've earned way too much cash in your career. So.
Wait till you get the bill from my Premier Inn this week.
But yeah, I've actually never told anyone that. But yeah, I mean,
he doesn't have a clue.
He has no idea. I mean, we don't. Well, to be honest, me and Nadal didn't speak much in our career. Pretty much not at all, really.
I think there's enough of that in the game. Now, again, we've talked about this a fair bit, but looking back at that generation, we talked about the Lendos, Ivanisevic, Stick, all of those boys, Sampras, Boris Becker, you felt like there were some personalities. Agassi, great characters.
Yeah.
And you suggest there might be a little bit of needle back then, but is that gone from the game?
I think it is. As I said, like, those guys for sure, I don't think they genuinely liked each other. Like, they had respect for each other and they played against each other and they competed, but I just don't believe that all these players like each other, and I don't like it how they mask it on the court. For me and Rafa, for instance, would never have been seen, hanging out or doing anything nice for each other on the court, or like, I feel like that's sport. That's the rivalries that we all love, and that's why we watch That's why we watch sport, and I think in today's day and age, there's too many pat on the backs, too many handshakes, picking up rackets for people that are falling over. Like, I don't know if I believe in that side of the sport. Like, yes, there's respect. You shake each other's hand at the end of the match. But between those lines, like, I want to kill you, to be honest. Like, I don't care what it takes to win. And yeah, that's one guy that I felt, me and Rafa, we hated each other, to be honest. And like, there's no shame in saying that.
Nah.
But again, like, he's one of the greatest of all time. I'm not. He had a better career, but to say that, we competed at the highest level together, it's pretty cool.
I could tell you responded to John Terry yesterday when he said that, especially in paddle, where he was saying that competitive spirit from his football career has now gone into his paddle career.
100%.
I mean, what are you going to be like when paddle takes more of a part in your life in your heads?
I'm super competitive at anything, and it's actually like affected some of my friendships, some of my relationships.
Yeah.
Even we have like this thing back home where we play with family, and I nearly had a fist fight with my brother. Like, the lines do get blurred with me when I compete, and I just want to win so bad, and like I turn into a different person, to be honest. Like, when we're chatting here or having a couple of beers, like, I'm actually quite nice, but then as soon as we compete at something, I just turn into an absolute.
I had my 15-year-old son in here yesterday, and it's interesting you mentioned that, because can you imagine what your relationship will be like when you have a child at some point and that competitive spirit, father-son relationship kicks in?
Yeah, I'm going to be very hard on him.
Yeah.
Also because I know that, anything great that's come in my life has come from my competitive spirit and, how that competitiveness. Like, my dad, taught me how to play tennis.
Did he push you hard?
He pushed me very hard. Yeah, and it was in a good way. You know, both my parents pushed me extremely hard on the tennis court. And yeah, when I lost, I was scared to come home. Like, I knew that they'd be disappointed. I knew that, like, I would be treated as... I mean, I don't know if this is a good thing, but, like, it's made me who I am today, and I'm going to be extremely hard on my kids.
It's a familiar story in sport, though, isn't it? If you look at David Beckham, Tiger Woods, top athletes have always had that level of pressure from their parents, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean...
Are we too soft now?
Yeah, I think it's a conversation to have. I mean, I'm not a big fan of participation medals, to be honest. Like, when I played tennis, you got a trophy if you won, or you came runner-up, and that was it.
So 128 players at Wimbledon, there's one winner. Are the other 127 losers, in your opinion?
Well, I don't know. I mean, tennis is a bit of a different kind of thing because you're progressing each round. So it's not like, you know, it's first place and then you get placed. It's like if you make the final, I feel like you don't feel like that. You feel a bit disappointed and you feel, you know, a bit underwhelmed and you know that you was so close to winning the whole tournament. You don't feel like you were the first loser. You know, you feel like you don't feel like you came second. You just feel like, I made the final of the tournament. It's an incredible feat. And, you know, I was right there.
You called something last week. I don't know if you remember saying this, but you said, just watch Djokovic quietly come through the competition, because all eyes have been on Alcaraz, haven't they, and Sinner. But as you said, here he is again, isn't he? He's just there, and his statistics, as you mentioned, are off the chart.
Yeah, I just think as an athlete that's played and still playing, I think we do underappreciate how good Novak is, and these athletes that retire. You know, we've spoken to some absolute legends up here, you know, football players that they're gods, and Novak, Nadal, Federer, like we've taken them for granted, and like Novak is 38 years old and he's beating prime athletes in their 20s and he's breaking records along the way, and we may never see any player like this ever again.
Give us the numbers again. So you said to me the semi-final statistic for him in his career.
Yeah, he's played, I think, over nearly 80 Grand Slams in his career, and he's made semi-finals 66% of the time. And that's like an insane stat. Yeah. And also, you know, nearly 100 wins at every Grand Slam. Like, these are numbers that we've never seen before. And you know, yesterday he plays against an Italian Caboli who is an incredible talent, loses the first set, doesn't look phased, comes out, destroys him the next 3 sets and just flies under the radar again. And, you know, I'm fortunate enough to have a relationship where we messaged last night. You know, I responded to his story and he responds back, and I'm just like, man, just enjoy it. Like, I'm telling him to just enjoy it because, like, I think all he thinks about is winning. But I'm just like, dude, you are breaking records still at 38, and we're witnessing it, and it's just, that's not normal.
So 54th semi-final, I think, is that right? The right number?
Yeah,
roughly?
Something for ridiculous like that, 54th semi. Yeah.
And potentially 23rd or 24th title.
25th. He's going for his 25th.
That's mad, isn't it?
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I think this is the only thing that he's doesn't have outright. Margaret Court's the only other player with 24 Grand Slams. So he got the gold medal. And I think he does look as good as I've ever seen him. So I strongly believe that he could win the title. But obviously, Sinner is, you know, in top form, playing some incredible tennis. But if he gets 25, I really don't understand what more there is left for Novak Djokovic on the tennis court. I think it's just time to lay it all and go enjoy some time with some family.
chats with Sinner? Has he ever messaged you?
We've never messaged before. The funny thing is, we actually had a decent relationship. Yeah. Like before it all, I guess the whole went around. But we actually had a fine relationship. We played each other, and we were fine then. And I mean, it was a zoo of a match. It was in Miami. I got game penalty. I got like 3 code violations. Nearly got defaulted. And it's hilarious because I was going absolutely nuts that match. The crowd was like a soccer match, and Sinner was just like sitting so quietly. And I knew that this guy was going to be like good just because he was so firm mentally, didn't get bothered by anything.
Composed and under pressure.
Yeah, just composed, and he just didn't fall for any of my circus theatrics or anything. And you know, we actually had a good relationship. Now we probably won't ever speak a word to each other again. But me and Djokovic are pretty tight.
It's been interesting, you know, being close enough to you to see how people respond to you on DM. You know, having Scott McTominay, Rio Ferdinand, all these guys. Yeah. But is there one that's dropped into your DMs that's caught you off guard?
I mean, there's been some absolute rockets. Yeah. But no, like, look, as I said, you know, we've had some. Sometimes I do have to wake up and be like, what is my life? Sometimes, you know, a kid from Canberra having all these amazing guests come up and come on my show and talk to us, and you know, like, even this is just random, but because we've been having a lot of football guests, like Emmanuel Adebayor is now, you know, we've rekindled our kind of friendship, sending, you know, memes to each other and reels to each other. It's just so weird. Like, it's just strange. Like, I used to play with John Terry on FIFA. You know, I used to play with Adebayor on FIFA. Like, it's just strange for me that I'm talking to guys like Mike Tyson, and it's weird. Like, it's not normal. But yeah, it's surreal.
What you're doing is putting together a table tennis and paddle league of the future. Yeah. For social media.
I mean, we could do a cool pro-am. Like, if we actually get some pros mixed with some of these celebrities and past athletes, there's some pretty good content.
Good man. Right, Nick, we've had some questions, as always, from the good listeners and good viewers on YouTube on this. This magical bit of equipment in front of us here that doesn't work. One of the questions was about coaching, right? You famously never had a coach, but the name that keeps popping up, we've been asked this a number of times, and thank you for sending these questions, and keep them coming, by the way, on Good Trouble and on talkSPORT's YouTube. Would you like Djokovic to coach you when he finally hangs up his racket?
Well, funny you said that, because when we actually filmed my show, Good Trouble, in Australia, he said that he'd put me on a 6-month training regime, and I said, I would never, ever do that.
Really?
No, I wouldn't.
Why not? Why not?
Because look,
I would love to see what would happen to you, just as a scientific experiment.
Because this is what happens, right? This is what happens. Like, okay, for instance, you look at. Let me give you an example of. Okay, me and Tsitsipas for a reason. He's had a better career than I have. He's got more titles, made more money, made more of an imprint, you know, with results. But has he had as much fun as Nick Kyrgios? I don't think so. He has had nowhere as much fun. I don't think he's enjoyed himself as much. You know, throughout his career, I think he's been very strict, and there's 2 ways to go about it. So you can't have it both ways.
Are there 3 ways to go about it though? Because the argument, if I was playing devil's advocate, would be get your head down for 15 years, and then you've got the rest of your life to have fun. But is the fun the same when you're not in the prime of your life physically?
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. Like, I wouldn't. One, I would love to do it. Like, there's a part of me that would love it, and I would understand what would happen if I did do that. But then I'm just like, I would be probably miserable for those 6 months. I'd be miserable, and you know, I enjoy the way I go about my tennis, and I enjoy going about my training sessions and doing all this. Like, no player has really done all of this type of stuff at the same time whilst they're playing, and I really enjoy doing this. So I'm sorry, Novak, but and look,
who would you choose then?
But he beat me in the Wimbledon final, but I've beaten him twice, so it's not like my style of the way I go about it doesn't work. Like, it works, just maybe not on the biggest stage.
Well, who would you take then if you could for the last couple of years? Who would you take on board? What about Andy's done a bit of coaching. He coached Djokovic with
Andy would leave after a week, though. He'd be fed up.
No, I think you could find.
No, he would be fed up. Trust me.
Yeah, right,
he'd be like, "Get up." I'm like, Andy. like, get out of here. No, I couldn't do it.
Fair play. Nick, I'm really interested to know the detail of what happens after a big final. So you played in the Wimbledon final. Yep. And again, crushing disappointment for you, right? Yep. But what do you have to do? You have to stay around, or can you just get out, get in a car and disappear?
You unfortunately can't just leave. Yeah. But with me, I'm really good friends with all the guys in the locker room, as in like the workers that are there for the 2 weeks. So I told them before the final, I said, have 3 beers on ice for me, like ready, regardless when I win or lose, because I'm coming in here and I'm going to get straight into it, the process of getting absolutely deleted regardless. But yeah, it was tough because, you know, you go through the process of receiving your trophy, you come into the locker room, you see your team first. They're there supporting you, giving you hugs, whatever, good effort. And you go in the locker room, crush some beers, and then you just shower and you get ready for the press, the media. You got to go in there, answer questions. And look, for me, I guess I'm a type of player where I'm not probably the worst person to ask, because I'm assuming every other person who's lost in a Grand Slam has been pretty down for like 2-3 days after, where I passed out at 12:30 that night. Like, I went back to the house, I drank, and I went out with my family. My dad was there. We had some shots, and they had to carry me home. I was vomiting by 12:30. I passed out pretty bad. But I guess for me, like, it was a perspective thing. Like, I made the Wimbledon final. It was like, I wasn't supposed to. I feel like that's something that a couple hundred people have ever done in the history of tennis. So for me, it was amazing. But at the same time, like, the process is, you got to do all the right things, and then you just enjoy it with your team.
Does it take time to sink in after that? I mean, again, in the days afterwards, what was that like for you emotionally?
Well, that's honestly the thing about tennis, is because there's tournaments every week, and there's 4 Grand Slams, tournaments every week. You have no time to actually process what you've just achieved. Like, you just made a Wimbledon final. You'd think that you would, have some time to process and have some time off, like an off season, and be like, wow, let's really just celebrate or understand what we just achieved. Where it's like, nah, I had to go train, the week after and get ready for Washington DC. And it's just like, that's what I don't like about tennis. It's like, you're always expected to just show up and just front up again. It's like, you win a Grand Slam, or I go win another one, or we'll go win another tournament. It's like, there's no other sport like it, really.
If you had your time again, though, would you have maybe walked away for a couple of weeks just to process that kind of disappointment or that kind of emotional journey?
Definitely towards the start. In the start of my career, I think I was kind of forced to play a lot more tennis than I wanted to, and it kind of burnt me out and made me have a bit of a bad relationship with tennis, because I should have taken that time away to be with my family and kind of process some of the things I was doing, especially a 19, 20-year-old kid. Like, you throw him into the deep end and play that long. But look, I think I need to get back on the court now. I think I'm taking too much time off.
Get back on. Right, we've got one last question from a viewer, and they asked, if you could tell us one thing about Murray or Djokovic or Federer or Nadal that nobody knows, what can you tell us?
I feel like me and Murray, for a good part of that, like, my career, we were really good friends in the locker room. Like, we would always have debates and like arguments and conversations across the locker room where everyone would kind of chime in and listen.
What kind of subject would you debate?
Oh, just like tennis things. If someone was, going through, if there was a scandal going on, or just like, something with doping or anything, like, me and him would have a conversation, and I feel like it was fun. Like, me, I don't think there was a period of time when me and Andy were actually really, really close.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed that time, because I didn't get along with many players, but Andy was definitely one of those guys. I mean, Novak now is awesome. He's actually a jokester, like a prankster.
Yeah.
Djokovic is he's like a big kid, to be honest. Like, and that's why I think he likes practicing with me, because he remembers that, like, he's human and this is all a bit of fun. Where he's like, people assume that he's just like super professional, which he is, but I can feel when I'm around him, he's just like, he can let his hair down a bit and just like have a bit of fun.
Right, before we leave today, predictions with what's still to come then. Like, we are getting into the business end, so we're watching a game here at the moment. Bencic is trying to
she's getting destroyed.
She's getting destroyed, isn't she? So it's looking like some big players in the last few rounds. But what are you thinking? What are your calls?
Well, on the women's side, I mean, obviously with Sabalenka out, leaves a massive opportunity for any of the females left. I thought this one was going to be a little bit closer, to be honest, but judging from how Swiatek's playing, she senses that, this was always the Grand Slam that she was probably likely to win. I mean, like, unlikely to win. She's not great on grass. She's never been super comfortable on it. But, I mean, with Sabalenka out and Coco out and all these other stars out, she probably knows that this is her best chance to win Wimbledon.
And what about the men then?
The men's is interesting.
Certainly
I can't ever count out Djokovic. But again, like, going up against Sinner, I'd probably give the slight edge to Sinner, to be honest, because, Sinner beat him the last time they played. And, pretty easy straight sets at the French Open. I want Djokovic to win. As a fan, I want Djokovic to win really bad. And I think a lot of the world do. A lot of the world would love to see Djokovic and Alcaraz in the final. But, I think I'd give a slight edge to Sinner. And then in the other one is Alcaraz and Fritz. And Fritz has been one of the best grass court players the tour has seen probably in the last 2 to 3 years. He always wins titles on grass. It's probably his best surface. So I think he could cause an upset, but again, it's if Alcaraz decides to be Carlos Alcaraz, the Grand Slam champion, it's going to be extremely hard for Fritz. But
is there something happening in American tennis at the moment?
Yeah.
Do you think? Because again, you look back to the Sampras Agassi era. It was a strong time, wasn't it? And in the women's game. But at the moment, do you feel like there's a bit of a resurgence where they're back in it?
Yeah, the American tennis right now is probably at its peak. Obviously, you have Agassi and Sampras in that era where they're dominating, winning Grand Slams. But now they went through a period where they had a lot of good players, but not players that were making deep runs at Grand Slams. They had John Isner, Jack Sock, Sam Querrey, Roddick. Like, they had a good group of guys. Roddick was a little bit older than those guys, but then they went through a period where they were really struggling to find that next guy to knock on the door for a Grand Slam. But now I think, with Fritz, Shelton, Tommy Paul, like these guys, you got good young guys like Mickelson as well that are really knocking on the door. Fritz has been consistent now, Grand Slam final at US Open, and now another semi-final at Wimbledon. And Anna Samova's, she's made a final of a Grand Slam as well. So women's tennis right now in America and men's tennis is as strong as I've ever seen. They've got good depth and they've got Grand Slam champions coming.
Great stuff, Nick. So one last show to do tomorrow.
Yeah, it's sad. I'm sad.
And then so you're heading off back to, where do you go next?
I'm heading to Bahamas, doing a bit of a training week there, and then
I'd like to train in the Bahamas with you. That sounds all right.
Well, I mean, we've got to get that calf.
Oh, we've got to get fixed. Yeah. But the Bahamas to do get the knee back.
Yes.
And then when do we see you on the? What are you aiming for? When would be your return?
Washington DC.
Right.
That's in like a week, 2 weeks. So
Excellent.
I'll be there.
Good man. Right, Nick. Good effort today.
See you
tomorrow.
Right,
I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Please do get in touch with comments on YouTube with talkSPORT and Good Trouble. Leave a question for the great man. We'll be back tomorrow. See you then.